Chair, we are live.
Thank you very much, Jack. Well, I'd like to welcome members of the Cabinet, officers and members of the public viewing on YouTube to this virtual meeting of the Cabinet. I am Councillor Dina Romero and I am the leader of Bath and North East Somerset Council. I will now call out the names of the other participants for this meeting to introduce themselves. Councillor Richard Samuel.
I'm Councillor Richard Samuel, Councillor for Walcott, and I'm Cabinet Member for Resources.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor Paul Crossley.
Hi, my name is Paul Crossley. I'm the Cabinet Member for Communities and will be presenting 2 papers tonight.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Sarah Warren.
Hello, I'm Councillor Sarah Warren, Cabinet Member for Climate Emergency and Neighbourhood Services.
Thank you, Sarah. Councillor Tim Ball.
I'm Councillor Tim Ball, Cabinet Member for Housing, Planning and Economic Development.
Councillor Dave Wood.
Hi, I'm Dave Wood, Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood Services.
Thank you, Dave. Councillor Joanna Wright.
Hello, Joanna Wright.
Thank you, Joe. Councillor Neil Butters.
Good evening, Councillor Neil Butters, Joint Cabinet Member for Transport Services with Joe Wright.
Thank you. Councillor Rob Appleyard.
Councillor Rob Appleyard, Cabinet Member for Adult Care, Safeguarding and Public Health.
Thank you, Rob. And finally, Councillor Kevin Guy.
Hello, I'm Kevin Guy. I'm the Ward Member for Bath Haven North and the Cabinet Member for Children's Services.
Thank you very much. Also present are Will Godfrey, who is the Chief Executive of the Council, and Michael Hewitt, who is the Interim Monitoring Officer, and Jack Latvich, who is the Senior Democratic Services Officer. So the Council has agreed a protocol to cover virtual meetings, and this meeting will operate in line with that protocol in accordance with Coronavirus Regulations 2020. The meeting has the same status and validity as a meeting held in the Guildhall. Can I remind members, officers and speakers to keep background noise to a minimum, to only speak one person at a time and not to speak over others. Please mute your microphones when not speaking and then unmute when I invite you to speak. Please indicate if you wish to speak by using the chat facility on Zoom by typing MIS, which stands for May I Speak, and I will call you in turn to speak. Councillor Richard Samuel will take over the chairing of the meeting if I have to leave the meeting or if I lose my connection. If the Cabinet is required to take a vote, I will read out each member's name in alphabetical order. Each member should then clearly state if they are for or against the motion. This will enable the Senior Democratic Services Officer to accurately record the vote and will also ensure that decision taking is clear to the public who are viewing on YouTube. If an item is to be noted, then I may just ask for an indication by hands being put up. On some occasions, Cabinet members' video feed may go blank. This will be seen as a black screen. Some Cabinet members use their iPads to participate at this meeting, and they may look at their agenda papers, which would temporarily switch off their video feed. Those Cabinet members will still be at the meeting, as they will be able to hear and be heard at the meeting, which are the virtual meeting requirements under Coronavirus Regulations 2020. So, before we move on, does anyone have any questions on that? Lovely. Right, so the second item on the agenda are apologies for absence. I do not believe there are any, and I will just ask Jack to confirm that is so.
That is correct, Madam Chairman. There are no apologies.
Thank you, Jack. So the next item is declarations of interest, and I will now hand over to Michael Hewitt to just talk us through what may need to be declared for this meeting.
Okay, thank you, Chair. In respect of item 14, I'm going to issue as monitoring officer a general dispensation for all councillors with regard to payment of council tax. And I'm going to issue an additional dispensation for councillors who are in receipt of services, and I would invite them to make any declarations now.
Thank you, Michael. I have a number of people who wish to speak. So Tim, and then Sarah, and then Kevin. Tim first.
Leader, I'm going to make a declaration of interest in the Children's Services budget. My grandson's in receipt of a care package.
Thank you, Tim. That's duly noted. Councillor Warren.
A family member is undertaking an educational, health and care needs assessment.
Thank you. Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Leader. Declaration of interest that a family business is receiving the government COVID business grant.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Wright.
A family member is in receipt of social services. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any further declarations? Okay, I'm just checking the chat. I think I've covered everybody, and all of those will be noted. So the next item is urgent business, and there is no urgent business. Now we move on to questions from the public and from councillors. So this time we have received 13 questions from councillors, and I will go through these in turn. So the first question from Duncan Hounsell is for Paul Crosley. Is there a supplementary question for this, Jack?
No supplementary.
Thank you. Second question from Councillor Sarah Bevan to Councillor Richard Samuel. Any supplementaries?
No supplementaries.
Third question from Councillor Sean Hughes to Councillors Wright and Butters. Any supplementaries?
No supplementaries.
Question 4 from Councillor May to Councillor Samuel. Supplementaries?
No supplementaries.
Question 5 from Councillor May to Richard Samuel. Are there any supplementary questions?
No supplementary questions.
Question 6 from Councillor May to Councillor Samuel. Is there a supplementary question?
There are no supplementary.
Then question 7 from Councillor May to Councillor Guy. Is there a supplementary question?
There are no supplementary questions.
Sorry, question 8 from Councillor Warrington to Councillor Ball. Is there a supplementary question?
There is no supplementary question.
Thank you. I apologise. Question 9 from Councillor Pritchard to Councillor Ball. Is there a supplementary question?
There is no supplementary question.
Question 10 from Councillor Pritchard to Councillor Crosley. Is there a supplementary question?
There is no supplementary question.
And question 11 from Councillor Pritchard to Councillor Wood. Is there a supplementary question for that one?
There is no supplementary question.
Question 12 from Councillor Pritchard to Councillor Wood. Is there a supplementary question?
There is no supplementary question.
Thank you. And the final question is from Councillor Pritchard to Councillors Wright and Butters. Is there a supplementary question for that one?
There is no supplementary question.
Thank you very much, Jack. And just to confirm, there were no questions from the public for this meeting. The next item are statements, deputations or petitions from public and councillors. So there are 19 registered speakers for this meeting, and each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to address the Cabinet, and each will be notified by Jack when they have 30 seconds left. So I'm going to ask each if they wish to speak to Cabinet now, or and some have already indicated that they wish to speak to the item which is later in the agenda. So I'll first ask David Redwell if you'd like to address the Cabinet. David. Where are you?
Most of my
There you are.
questions are like on item 6. Do I want to start? Try to start with item 6? Is that okay?
Yes, sorry, David. Yes, we're on
Yeah.
item 6, which is where you would make a statement. My
Yeah, fine.
apologies.
Thank you. Sorry. Yes, I want to make a statement about transport and the budget, really. First thing is, obviously, normally I'd come along to the meeting, virtual or reality, and ask the council to make sure it protects the public transport budget for this year. But of course, that is now a WECA function. So really what I'm asking is to make sure the public transport budget is passported to the West Midlands Combined Authority and the Metro Mayor to make sure he maintains the rural bus network in particular and the evenings and Sunday services in the City of Bath. So that's my first plea. My second plea is obviously to say thank you to the Mayor, which is unusual for me, but to say thank you to Tim Bowles and to Peter Mann in particular for maintaining the level of bus services and train services they have during the national lockdown. Most people can get around, and of course we've got the shuttles to the vaccination site up at the racecourse. So I'm very pleased with that situation, and a lot of work's gone into that. So I must say thank you there. On the issue of the rural transport package, the government's got a consultation on rural transport strategy. I'm just concerned to make sure that WECA, Baines and the Western Gateway Transport Board have made representation. Baines is not just a city, it's obviously a very deep rural area, and so is WECA. We don't always get the rural money because combined authority don't always make the position clear to central government. I just want to make sure this time that we don't miss any opportunity to obtain any rural transport money. Make sure we take part in the consultation, which finished on the 14th. On the bus transport strategy, thank you very much to Joanna for the letter. I just want to make sure that disabled and accessible access to transport is taken on board. Wheelchair accessible taxis, of course, need to get into city centre streets. We need to make sure that we've got castle curbs and drop curbs, and obviously wheelchair accessible pavements. Legislation's good in Baines, but it's not necessarily good at national level. We still don't have full accessible road coaches outside of the National Express and Megabus network in law. We still don't have every rail replacement service coach made accessible to wheelchairs. These are things obviously we're working with the DFT on, and hopefully will come a good by the end of the year on the regulations. But obviously it's very important from a disability point of view to keep reminding every transport officer they need to take account of disabled access during planning the city and the city environment.
Second, David.
Okay, on light rail or rapid transit, I'm very keen to see that project in Bristol and Bath. I'd urge the council to make that one of its top priorities to go forward with, and to make sure we make progress, and also in improving the corridor bus network, especially down to Norton Ras towards Chippenham and Keynsham and towards North Bristol through South Gloucestershire. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. I'll just check if I've got any cabinet members who wanted to ask you any factual questions. No? Okay. And I know that they'll take on the comments that you made back to WECA meetings as appropriate. So thank you very much, David. And thank you for your regular attendance at our meetings. So my next person I'd like to ask to make their statement is Carrie Elizabeth Erickson, who I understand wants to make a statement on the Bath City Centre High Street renewal. Carrie, are you in the room?
I am, yes. Thank you.
Okay.
So unlike David, this is my first appearance, so I'm just going to contextualize by introducing myself very briefly. My name is Kari. I've lived in Bath for just about 2 years. I moved here from East London, bringing my young family and my nascent business. And one of the reasons that we decided to come to Bath is when we were visiting, there was a lot of life and vibrancy, and it seemed like a really fun place to live. And much of that is still true, but over the course of the last year, the changes to our city have been profound. And a lot of that has to do with the pandemic, but there's ancillary issues related to the adoption of technology and changing patterns in how we shop and work and travel. And these are big questions that across the country and indeed across the world, we're trying to figure out. And I'm excited to be part of that conversation. And one of the ways I've done so far is I'm part of a residents association, and I am now chair of a business support committee within FOBRA. And under the guise of that, I've been talking to residents and businesses within Bath about what it's like to do business here, what the future might look like, and what we can do to ensure that the town center, and not just, you know, central Bath, but all the areas where we live, you know, within this council, retain their vibrancy and are places that we're excited to live and shop and work. And there is real concern in both of these groups, residents and business owners, that this is that there are problems that are not being addressed, and that other agendas have been prioritized over keeping a healthy economy alive and supporting small businesses. And I know that there is work that you're doing. I attended the Economic Recovery Board webinar, which I found to be very informative and helpful. I have been talking to Bath Bid, and I know that you've been handing out lots of money to help people, and that's great. But, and I also know that there's some issues you can't touch, like rates. And I also know that in a heritage city like this, real estate is complicated, and there's some lease issues that you can't do very much about. However, I think there is a feeling among business owners that there are some things you could be doing. There could be some flexibility with dilapidations notices. Okay, thank you. And to summarize then, I saw today some comments about the state of the budget for the council, and alongside that, an article about small businesses and their own fears going into the future. And I just really invite the council to include the private sector in their plans for renewal. I've seen the renewal vision. I know that's part of it. I think that stakeholders need to include Bath Bid and the residents. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Kari. I'm just going to ask if any of the Cabinet has a question that they might wish to ask of you.
Well, no question specifically, but we're due to meet, I think, next Tuesday. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to developing the conversation with you. It's nice to see your face before we meet. So
likewise.
Speak again on Tuesday.
Okay.
And I'm sure you're already aware of this, Kari, but a decision is due to be made in March on the Bath City Centre High Street renewal. So I'm sure you will, we will be in correspondence over that, I'm sure.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And obviously you may watch the rest of this meeting on YouTube if you wish to, which is obviously an invitation to anybody who wants to watch the rest of the meeting, I guess. I'd like to invite Councillor Paul Myers to address the Cabinet in his capacity as the chair of the corporate PDS panel. So is Paul, there you are, Paul. And just to remind you that you have up to 5 minutes.
Lovely,
So,
thank you.
over to you.
I'm speaking today on the budget as chair of the corporate scrutiny panel and as the chair of chairs of scrutiny rather than as leader of the Conservative group. I've sought to summarise the draft minutes of 3 scrutiny panels representing many hours of input. The challenge has been that the bulk of the minutes cover very detailed comment rather than in overall resolutions, so here goes. For Children, Adults, Health and Wellbeing panel of 19th of January, key points raised included: will the proposed adult social care precept increase of 3% be ring-fenced? What would the proposed £603,000 saving have on the re-enablement service? How will savings be actually achieved in practice in that area of the budget? Concern was expressed that the standard of our services regarding care delivery package should not be lowered. How will work be delivered in early years SEND when the vacant post is deleted? And finally, concern was expressed at the proposed significant £43,000 saving relating to children's centres. In conclusion, the panel resolved to accept the proposals made within the presentation on the basis that they were given whilst awaiting clarification on how the adult social care precept increase of 3% would be used. When it came to Climate and Sustainability PDS panel on the 25th of January, concern was expressed about the impact of fly tipping if charging for building material was introduced at recycling centres. There was interest in finding ways to reduce reliance on commercial income. And where has the increase in income in the waste and fleet operation come from, as well as how is a reduction in plant maintenance possible? The need to find an alternative waste depot solution for residents of Bath city centre was discussed, many of whom it was felt don't own a car, and this was raised as a concern. Will the same level of service be maintained for parks and bereavement, given a staffing reduction? And on transport, could the proposed saving on inspection gangs be mitigated by encouraging community reporting? Concern was expressed at pay and display machines being replaced with an app with respect particularly to visitors to the area and whether this would complicate it for them. Also, could there be unintended consequences of a reduction of security in car parks, and in particular impacts on the use of park and ride, which is so important to achieve less cars in the city centre? Concerns about maintenance savings regarding flood and drainage issues were raised, and it was stated that Fix My Street did not always give a quick response. Queries were made about new developments and whether they're going to be adopted, and it was confirmed and discussed that actually there'll be stricter scrutiny about what we actually maintain and whether we're liable to do that. And finally, was gully emptying being reduced, and it was confirmed that this referred to inspections only. Our third panel, corporate PDS panel, on the 1st of February, concern was expressed that income from heritage services, commercial estate and parking will be down, and that the estate may be harder hit again as it contains retail. And there was a discussion about the importance of securing new income streams. Raised at the capital, project resources had been hit by 1.8 million, but it was noted that the whole programme would be impacted rather than one project. The Mental Capacity Act fund was taken as no savings, as a saving, as there were no commitments that had been made. Question was raised whether £300,000 of saving in senior staff is realistic. It was also raised that there was a risk of slippage regarding council tax deficit, which is set to be recovered over 3 years. Concern was expressed over a proposed £22 saving in security cameras, again for park and ride, as already mentioned. Clarification was requested on borrowing 13 million from the council's own reserves and it being paid back much later in years 4 and 5. Reference and concern was raised over going digital and how this could potentially be discriminatory for those without internet access. In terms of adults' social
30 seconds, Paul.
Yeah, looking at these savings, concern was expressed about the ability to cover the costs of basics such as incontinence pads, capital expenditure for climate emergency. There was concern about renewable energy being spread across the district. There will be potentially more deaths due to COVID, and there were questions on the capacity of bereavement services, and there were concerns about road maintenance in rural areas. Full details of the discussions and officer responses are included in the draft minutes.
5 minutes up.
On the 3 panels, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and at the same time would like to thank officers for all their hard work.
Thank you very much, Councillor Myers, and you were very nearly in time.
I
So
nearly did.
thank you.
I
I don't know if any of Cabinet has any questions to ask Paul Myers, but I'm sure we'll take his comments into account when we get to that item. Otherwise,
Yes, Chairman, I have a very short question for Councillor Myers. Will you work with me and officers to develop improvements in the scrutiny of budget planning for the next budget round?
Yes, I will very much indeed, in my role as Chair of Chairs and involved very much and been so personally committed to the role of scrutiny and policy development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Samuel, and as I say, thank you to Councillor Myers as well. My next person on my list, sorry, is Martin Grixoni. Are you in the room, Martin? There you are.
Okay, so as many of you know,
Sorry, I think there's a problem with your microphone. It seems awfully quiet.
I'm going to try and get a bit closer. Is that any better?
Yes,
Okay,
that's a little
lovely.
better.
So, as many of you all know, I stood as a Conservative candidate at the last locals, and the result sits before me tonight. And now that is politics.
Sorry, is there still a problem then for most people? I think that, yeah. Is there any way you can change your microphone a little bit so that it
I
is?
don't know if you have another speaker, but I can't think what's wrong with it, but I can try and sort it out and come back a little later on.
Okay, I've got yeah, I'll take the next speaker if you can adjust your sound quality. Thank you. So I'd now like to invite Teresa Franklin, if she could join us now, and then we'll come back to Martin hopefully afterwards. So Teresa, I understand you wanted to speak now as opposed to in front of the item. So if you'd like to speak now, you have 3 minutes.
I'm very happy to speak later in front of the item, which is the approach golf course. I'm not quite sure why I'm scheduled here. Either way, I'm happy.
Okay, well, as you're here, and the next item will be that item.
Okay,
well,
go ahead.
It's not really the next item, but okay, if you go ahead, we will make sure we take your comments into account.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm Teresa Franklin, and I'm living Cavendish Crescent, and here I am, if you can see this, with our councillors, Lucy Hodge and Mark Elliott. I'm here specifically because I found both those councillors to be extremely helpful for us over the last couple of weeks, and because I voted them in. So I'm a Lib Dem person, and I look back at the manifesto which I linked into, and the first line in the council manifesto says, "We are a listening council that acts for residents." I know it inverts, but you'll recognize all your ticks on it. Here it is. The turnkey solutions to make this happen, and again it inverts, but here it is, are opening up the council to make sure the people in charge hear the voice, I presume, of its residents. The second one is letting residents make decisions to get better outcomes. And the third one is making the council more transparent and responsive. All solutions that I 100% buy into. So therefore, was very sad in connection with the High Common that you failed us on all three of those. You failed the residents of Bath, you failed the golfers, the walkers, the lovers of this great open space which we call the High Common. The Approach Golf Course is an iconic tract of land within an area of outstanding natural beauty in the middle of the World Heritage City, with majestic trees which fall under the Tree Protection Ordinance. Yet, you, our voted in councillors, chose to put the Approach Golf Course up for tender not once, but twice in the middle of a pandemic, without any consultation whatsoever, with a complete lack of transparency, and sadly, it gets worse. You chose to do this with a tender process which we perceive to be undemocratic, a bidding process which allows for the council to make all the decisions without any resident involvement whatsoever.
30 seconds left.
You, our trusted councillors, Lucy and Mark, you opposed this. So we, the residents, the neighbours of the Approach Golf Course, found our strong, united collective voice, and you've seen it over various medium, BBC, press, radio, Twitter, and the 4,220 signatures connected by Ben. So when you cast your votes tonight, listen as you promised, hear our voice as you promised, and get the better outcome for the residents of Bath as you promised. Thank you.
It's always going to be a first time. Thank you very much for your statement. I'm just looking at my cabinet to see if anybody wishes to ask you a question. Otherwise, I know that your comments will be taken into account and in the discussion that we'll have at that item. And I hope you will watch on the YouTube the discussion about the approach golf course. Thank you very much.
I will. Thank you.
So I'd like to see if Martin Grigsoni's sound issues have been resolved. Martin, are you there?
Chair, if it's okay, I'll just keep the video off. If you can hear me a little better now, I'm not entirely sure what's going wrong, but white hot technology, does that sound any better than previously?
I think it sounds a little better, yes.
Yes, so apologies for that, but if I'm able to crack on as best I can, then obviously need to go out and buy myself a new microphone, I think.
Okay.
All right, good. Well, listen, as many of you know, I did stand as a Conservative candidate at the last locals, and the result does now sit before me this evening. That is politics, Brexit influenced or otherwise. You in turn would expect me, as part of what is rather an unofficial opposition in a city where we had over 35% of the vote, which is similar to Baines, yet we're not represented here. So again, that's politics, and so here I stand. Now, I have little doubt in the sincerity and motives of the Cabinet in their efforts, but I do have genuine worries and an appeal on behalf of many locals with concern. Accepted, we're in a pandemic, it's not easy. My challenge to you is that I believe there has been an overly high level of mishap, ineptness, and to be blunt, sometimes single-issue lunacy beyond your manifesto. And this is a plea to you to genuinely beware of that in the second half of your tenure. We all want the best for our city and authority. So when we are, for example, selling off the family silver too cheaply, never mind the borrowing, as mentioned earlier, of 13 million from the reserves, do we get interest on that? On our environmental emergency, the Tufferfield debacle and the MSN gas containers come to mind. LTNs, skewed questionnaires, too quick a consultation, thankfully now reined back on. The last city and unity authority tip in the country to open, and even now one of the last where you need to book. Result, more fly tipping. Now, there was a mention of charging for rubble and little guessing where that'll end up, so a false saving. Well, next, when we find ourselves ridiculed in the national and moreover left-leaning press over both our MP and Lib Dem councillors supporting conspiracy over 5G, damaging our reputation, and quite frankly, it's just embarrassing. Planned closure of Entry Hill Road, a U-turn. The loss of the Tourist Information Office, and the planned exclusion of private vehicles from the city centre with an ineffective ring of steel. What does that say about a welcoming city? Would actually like a U-turn on those last two. The chaos and considerable worry over the future of the High Common is going to be mentioned, so I'll keep away from that. Now, one of those incidents might be excused as a simple mistake, 2 or 3 as bad luck perhaps, but there are now so many instances, it points surely to shortcomings in leadership and focus at the centre. Behind most of those examples, it seems to me is poor consultation or indeed none. The resulting mistakes are causing real worry to residents and businesses in our city at a time when we really don't need any more. It's really no good councillors going on social media to dismiss residents raising concerns as Tory trolls or using the excuse of the pandemic. The council has a consultation charter which says at the very beginning—
30 seconds, Martin.
Thank you, Frank. We want to ensure that we provide an extensive and meaningful programme of engagement and that we do this in a timely, clear and transparent way. Now, some Cabinet members have said that's too expensive. This really is unacceptable. How much time, money and effort is wasted by U-turning? No, residents must be consulted. That's what your own charter says you'll do. So on behalf of all residents, I want to urge this administration to get a grip of itself and its MP, whose last question to the House was on EU fishing quotas, for goodness sake. So
Time's up.
Okay, please stop listening to the echo chamber of your own thing, and really I'd ask you to just do better. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Martin. I'm just having a look around the room to see if I have anyone who wishes to ask you a question. No. Thank you very much. And I'm glad we managed to sort out, or you managed to sort out your sound quality on the second attempt. Okay, Jack, I'm just checking. Do we have any other public speakers who don't want to speak before the relevant item?
No, Madam Chairman, I haven't received any requests via email or by phone, but you may want to check now with either Approach Golf Course or Entry Hill Antrim Hill Golf Course, if they wish to speak now or maybe before the relevant item.
Okay, so are there any speakers who want to speak before we come to the item? To be honest, we'll be at that item in a few moments anyway. I'm not seeing any hands or anybody coming off
That's
mute,
Chairman.
so
I think
will.
you can proceed with the rest of the agenda.
Thank you very much, Jack. So item 7 is the minutes of the meeting of the 10th of December. Can I invite someone to move that these are a correct record of that meeting? Thank you, Councillor Crossley. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Guy. So could you all indicate that you are happy that I approve these minutes? Fantastic, thank you. I think that's unanimous. And obviously I will sign and date those in due course. So the next item, item 8, is single member items now requisitioned to Cabinet, and I believe there are none. Item 9 is matters referred by policy development and scrutiny bodies. And we have received the extract from the PDS's minutes in advance of the meeting, and I'd like to thank Councillor Myers for his statement as well. So thank you to Councillor Myers. I don't know if he's still in the room or if he's gone to watch us on YouTube. So item 10 is the recent single member decisions taken. Can I ask Cabinet to note these items, please? Okay, all those in favour of noting? Excellent. Right, item 11 is the decision on the award of a contract to a new operator for the Approach Golf Course site. I have a number of speakers who have registered to speak, and I would now like to call on Councillor Lucy Hodge to make her statement, please. Lucy.
Okay, it's very bright in here. Very much. Okay, I'm ready. Good evening, Cabinet members, members of the public. This evening, a significant decision is to be taken about a very important, much loved and much used site at the heart of our World Heritage City. No doubt everyone will recall the 22nd of July Cabinet meeting when the future of both the Entry Hill and Approach golf courses were addressed. In relation to the Approach course, papers stated it is intended to retain the 18-hole golf course. I think it is true to say that we all came away from the meeting reassured. The forward plan of Cabinet meetings is not foremost in residents' minds, so you can imagine how surprised, alarmed and even angry residents felt when a council statement on the 3rd of Feb announced an undisclosed new operator for the site with a decision today. Little warning and certainly no consultation. Due to levels of confidentiality applied to the process, details of the bid or bidder were not to be shared. As Ward Councillor, I have focused on enabling routes into the democratic process, and here we all are today. But you will appreciate that it is very difficult to argue a case when no one actually can be certain what the bid is. And into this void of information, it is inevitable that rumours will abound that are most likely not true, such as limited access to the High Common or the extent of concrete for any infrastructure. With these thoughts in mind, I urge you to take on board the messages conveyed to you by our community this evening. A petition of over 4,000 signatures cannot be ignored. Banners are all around High Common, posters in windows, and the number of residents across the whole city who have taken the time to write. We appreciate that our Lib Dem administration is looking at all its costs with rigour and is having to take difficult decisions to maintain essential services. If the Cabinet is minded not to proceed, we ask that resources found to maintain this site as parkland and that there is a pause so that community wishes to retain space for exercise and picnics, affordable golf and a vibrant cafe can be considered. So members of the Cabinet, I would ask you to consider the following questions. Are we confident that the proposed bid is suitable or appropriate for this beautiful, iconic green space in a World Heritage setting? Does the bid add value in terms of an increase in exercise opportunities for all ages, noting our significant elderly population? Does the bid add significant enhancement in terms of our
30 seconds.
climate emergency aspirations to this already green site with protected trees and wilded perimeters? Harmful chemicals to maintain greens are a thing of the past. And finally, does the bid offer any potential income for the council? This is a long contract that is on offer. Is it an activity that is on the rise and will remain popular for 20 years, or is it perhaps a passing fad? If the answer to any of these questions is no, I would urge the Cabinet, on behalf of the residents of Lansdowne and the wider city beyond, to take the decision this evening not to proceed with this bid. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Hodge. I'm now going to turn to your fellow ward councillor, Councillor Mark Elliott.
Hello, thank you, Chair. Pleased to have the opportunity to address Cabinet about the future of the approach golf course this evening. My fundamental point here is a simple one. Last summer, the residents were told by the Cabinet member responsible that any move away from golf on the 18-hole side of the approach course, at least, would not happen without proper consultation. The only bid the Cabinet have in front of them is not for traditional golf. Whatever the semantics of whether it can be described as golf derived, I think we can all agree, because the Cabinet papers stated that it isn't traditional golf. I believe those two facts, that a commitment was given to properly consult if there was any move away from golf, and the fact that this is a move away from golf, means that the Cabinet have no choice but to turn down this bid. There are many other points that could be made, and I'm sure other people will expand on them. The fact that the procurement process only produced one bid, which is never a positive indicator for a procurement process. The fact that officers were having to run a procurement process under very difficult circumstances in the middle of a pandemic. The fact that anecdotally, golf has actually had a massive upsurge in interest over the summer due to the pandemic, and we don't know what the golf industry will look like post-pandemic. The fact that the approach course allows cheap municipal access to a sport which is often seen as expensive and elitist. But ultimately, I think the fact that the Cabinet member committed to proper consultation and engagement with the community on any change from golf, and this is a change from golf when such consultation hasn't occurred, is a strong enough argument on its own. The Lib Dem manifesto, as Theresa said in 2019, said we would listen to residents and put them first. We committed to opening up the council to make sure that the people in charge hear your voice, letting residents make decisions to get better outcomes, and making the council more transparent and responsible. I realise the world has changed a great deal since May 2019, but these should still be our fundamental driving principles, and accepting this bid under these circumstances would fly in the face of those principles. I'm therefore confident the Cabinet will not want to accept it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. My apologies also to Councillor Hodge. I didn't actually pause to ask if any Cabinet member had any questions for either for Lucy or for Mark. I'm just checking. Okay, as you know, your comments will be taken into account in the discussion that will follow. So thank you to both of you. Can I turn to the next speaker on my list, which is Lynn Fernquest. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for letting me come along and speak this evening. I'm speaking on behalf of Bath Rugby Foundation. I'm Bath Rugby Foundation's Chief Executive. We know Bath and North East Somerset Council is committed to reducing health inequalities. And since 2003, when Bath Rugby Foundation was born, it's been a central part of its mission too. However, if we want to lead the way and improve the mental and physical health of everyone in our city, we believe exploring ways to retain this vital green space for the benefit of the whole community is the very best solution. By using the assets of this great city and by keeping this green space open, we think this gives us the best chance possible of improving the health of everyone, regardless of their income. At Bath Rugby Foundation, we support vulnerable children and young people because we know this strengthens communities, and stronger communities are better for everyone in them. Rugby is where we started. However, rugby is not all we do. We use walking, running, golf, cycling and many other sports to change the lives of children and young people who have had the toughest start in life. Every year we use sport and education to improve the mental and physical well-being of thousands of vulnerable youngsters in our community. And the pandemic has strengthened our belief that in any economic downturn, it is the vulnerable in our communities who suffer the most. And a lack of fitness and poor nutrition are at the heart of this. We know as we come out of the pandemic, we and charities like us are going to be needed more than ever. Bath Approach Golf Course sits between some of the most affluent and some of the most disadvantaged sections of our city, a city that is already one of the most unequal in the UK. We understand keeping it as a golf course may be unsustainable, but losing the site as a space for everyone would create wider health divisions. Availability of affordable grassroots sports is a necessity, not a luxury. And by retraining this space, we can ensure the health gap between the rich and poor in Bath does not come even wider than it already is. Thank you. Bath Rugby Foundation using this site for several years, and our disabled students particularly have received the greatest benefit from this affordable space. It would be a huge blow to lose it. For almost 2 decades, Bath Rugby Foundation has demonstrated a successful track record of partnering with other charities, businesses and the local authority to make things happen. And were you to vote against this proposal tonight, Bath Rugby Foundation stands ready to be part of a strong and diverse consortium to breathe life back into this incredible space. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lynn. I'll just check if there's any Cabinet members that wish to ask you a factual question. No, okay, thank you. And obviously, please feel free to watch this item and the rest of the meeting on YouTube. And thank you for your statement.
Thank you very much.
Okay, can I ask if Patricia Ludlam is here?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. So you've got 3 minutes for your speech as well.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm Patricia Ludlam and I'm representing Sion Hill and Summerhill Road Residents Association. We border the north side of the Approach Golf Course and the properties have boundaries and gates onto the course. And we do oppose any change in use of the High Common, and we would like golf to continue here. Do realise the financial implications of this. High Common has been a park for 140 years and it's a beautiful green space with the best views of Bath from the top. It's situated in the heart of the World Heritage setting of Bath and is very important within that setting, and we feel we need to protect Bath's heritage. I spoke at the Cabinet meeting last July to support golf remaining on the Approach course when the future was in doubt. And at the end of that meeting, Councillor Crossley did sum up the debate by stating that golf would definitely remain on the 18-hole course. As residents, we were all very relieved and relaxed over the summer, especially when we got further assurances as the months went by. The golf operation has been closed for a year due to the pandemic, and the High Common has proved to be a place of refuge for young and old to exercise, enjoy the panoramic views and escape from the lockdown. The golfers still come with their own clubs and manage to play at quiet times. Snow brought out the toboggans and that was fun for everyone. However, a new operator had to be found and the council had decided to redefine the High Common as a sports venue, not a park, being the council's view that sports venues have to be self-financing. The land had previously been maintained by the council, but it could no longer was able to do it. We do understand why the difficulties that happen at the moment. We heard the rumour that disc golf was prepared to take on this site because little maintenance of the land is required once it's set up. But the bid became the preferred bid because there was only one bid. And in spite of it being totally inappropriate for this historic site, This golf is not found in residential areas because of the danger of it, and it's usually found in playing fields or countryside venues. It's noisy, harmful to trees and to the land, and it's mostly played by young people, whereas golf is enjoyed by young and old, and it's been on the common for 60 years in harmony with the residents. It's special because people can come and play without joining a club, and it's affordable for the students, which we see so many of them come to play.
3 minutes up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your statement, and obviously that will be taken into account when we come to discuss the item. I'm just seeing if there was any points of clarification that Cabinet would like to ask for. I'm not seeing anything. So thank you, Patricia, and please feel free to watch this on YouTube, and then you'll be able to see how the decision is discussed and actually then taken. I'd like to now move to Ben Reid. Ben.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to state my views on the future of the Approach Golf Course. As a regular golfer who doesn't play golf anywhere else, I've spent thousands of hours there over the years, and this evening I'm representing the many other regular and occasional golfers, a number of whom I've corresponded with over recent weeks. For those who don't know the background to today's discussion, the Approach course has over the course of the last 9 or 10 months been dragged into what was initially a consultation about the future of Entry Hill Golf Course, resulting in a tender process seeking new operators for both sites. There's always been an inconsistency between the extensive public consultation that took place on Entry Hill and the lack of any public consultation on the future of the Approach course. All the more surprising when you consider that the Approach course is a central and highly visible, sensitive site, not to mention very popular and historically consistently profitable, barring all but a very recent period under the care of an inexperienced and frankly reluctant provider. With this in mind, last summer, I started the petition on change.org to keep golf at the Approach course, and around that time was reassured by a commitment from Councillor Crossley that there would be no change of use on at least the 18-hole side. When last week it became clear that no golf operator had submitted a tender, I and other supporters started to publicise the petition again, resulting in overwhelming support and more than 3,000 additional signatures in less than a week. Since I emailed the petition to Cabinet members just a few days ago, the number of signatures has more than doubled, and as of lunchtime today stood at over 4,200. I want to make it clear that these signatures are not based on rumour or misunderstanding about any secret plans to sell or build on the course. Neither are they interested in finger pointing or apportioning blame for the gradual decline of the course over a period of 10 years or more. They're simply asking the Council to honour the commitment it made last summer to keep this unique facility in its current form, because it complements the heritage setting, because it effectively doubles as a park for many other casual users, because it's used by people of all ages and backgrounds, because it's affordable, accessible, sustainable, improves physical and mental well-being, and because it's fun. I urge the Council to note the tidal wave of affection for the Approach course that's been seen over recent weeks and honour their commitment to retain golf on the site. In the immediate term, this means abandoning the current procurement process and continuing low-level maintenance of the course. In turn, giving time to work with the community to find a solution that secures the long-term future of public golf in Bath. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. And as I said to the other speakers, your comments will be taken into account when we discuss this item. Do I have any factual questions for Ben? Can I thank you again for your statement? And I'll move on to Peter Langley. Hello, Peter.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Just want to kind of reiterate, I thought Ben's points were very good. A quick 30 seconds on me though. I've been here just a few years in Bath, but my grandfather came to Bath in 1890. He was down the Somerset coal mines. I went down when he was 15, but his dream was always to come to Bath, and he made it when he was like 21. Got a job in a clerk's office in Norwich Union. didn't want his kids going down the mines, basically. So 100 years later, I'm here, basically, and I look over the High Common, which was his most favoured treasured place to go, basically. He didn't live up in Lansdowne, had a tiny cottage, but this is where the place he loved most in Bath, because he could look over the Southern Hills and he knew that's the future he'd left, actually, the mines that all his friends were still down. Anyway, let's get back to the kind of business in hand. I've no idea what's going to be put on the High Common. Maybe it's disc golf, maybe it's not. Not really for me to say. I don't think whether, even if it is disc golf, that would harm heritage aspects. But what I do know is that you in Bath have excellent planners, some of the best conservation experts in the country, actually, and I think they should be involved in this issue because they can bring to bear the kind of wider community interest, which is so important to make all this work. So one thing that I've led on today is the filing of an application with Heritage England to make the High Common, so the 18-hole piece of it, the High Common, a Grade 1 listed park, basically. And we're doing that because it'll make it clear what rules then apply to the High Common. At the moment, it's kind of unclear. It's the Common, okay, there's conservation area. If it's a Grade 1 listed park, everyone knows what you're doing. What impact does that have on the decision you have to make today, which I think is an incredibly hard decision? You're clearly juggling a lot of complicated factors. I think it makes it virtually impossible to actually prove the tender because there's so much uncertainty now. Are you dealing with a piece of common land that, okay, is in a conservation area, or is it going to be a Grade 1 listed park? I just think it's going to be impossible to finalize contracts on that basis. I think the only kind of practical thing you can do is basically turn it down. But what if you do decide to proceed? Many of you will be aware that a legal letter from local firm Stone King was sent to you. It explains the basis for the judicial review challenge. Nobody wants to go down there. It's the last thing people want. The grounds you spell out, I won't go into the detail, irrationality, you wrongly exercise powers,
30 seconds,
etc. Absolutely no one wants to go down the route. Terrible waste of money. Collective madness if we do, but letter shows that it's a real and imminent threat. We need to back away from that. Urge you basically, now there are new facts on the ground, the application to Heritage England, there's too much uncertainty, I think, to really kind of approve. Possibility of becoming a Grade 1 listed park really changes everything. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Peter. So was there any questions for our speaker? In that case, then, thank you again for your statement, and that will be taken into account when we come to the item, which is after everyone has spoken on this item. So I'd like now to ask Sally Parks if she would like to unmute. You've already unmuted, I see, and please, would you like to make your statement?
Thank you very much. I'm Sally Parks, and I live adjacent to and have access by way of a gate onto the golf course. I represent Zion Hill and Summerhill Road Residents Association. Nearly all of our members use the golf course to walk to and from the city. Hundreds of people a day of all ages walk, exercise, jog, walk dogs, play golf, and generally enjoy the park setting in harmony. It gives a sense of freedom, being in the fresh air, and relieves mental stress. It also alleviates the use of cars. It is the lung of the city, accessible by all. Freedom of pedestrian access contributes to the clean air zone and lowers traffic. Golf has become more popular during the pandemic, and clubs report that memberships are oversubscribed. Where better than an affordable place for young people to begin and carry on their golf? People have come from all over Bath and beyond to use the golf facility. We want to be able to walk on our common, to roam freely. We do not want to see gates, nets or fences or blobs of concrete on which to erect disc goals. The local feeling is to keep the status quo and has been strongly demonstrated. There is also a very successful golf petition to save the approach golf course, which Ben Reed's spoken about, as over 4,000 signatures. We want the council to defer their decision to change anything on the approach golf course until market forces normalise and we are out of the pandemic measures. We want the council to defer their decision to change anything on the approach golf. Sorry, I've just repeated myself. A deferment would allow the opportunity to obtain more than one tender. It would also allow for the public consultation that we have not had. It would then show that the council can be open, honest and fair in its dealings. There has been a lack of transparency in keeping us informed about the bids. How can a decision be made when information is withheld? At the last Cabinet meeting, we were told there would be no change of use. We hear that disc golf is to be introduced. We see no resemblance to golf in this disc thing. We've now heard that one of the options for the Cabinet is not to proceed with the preferred bidder process. We urge the Cabinet to listen to our local ward councillors, Lucy and Mark, and to also hear the Bath residents' wishes. This UNESCO city is known for its buildings nestled amongst green spaces. At the very least, we would wish this space to be maintained as a park. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sally. And I know your comments will be addressed in the discussion. So is there anyone in Cabinet who wishes to ask any factual questions of Sally? Okay, thank you very much for your statement. I'd now like to ask Justin Drager, who I see is here and already unmuted. So if you'd like to make your statement, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I am the chairman of the Cavendish Road Society, the residents' association overlooking the approach golf course. Our residents make extensive use of this beautiful green space. I strongly urge the Cabinet to reject the only bid which has been made for the approach golf course and to pause the whole process of finding a service provider, at least until the pandemic has come to an end. The Cabinet decision tonight is a binary one, to accept or to reject the bid. If the bid is accepted, the council is locked into the contractual process. So it is no good saying to residents, don't worry, this is just the start of the process. Nothing has been decided yet. Residents will be consulted. That is not the case. Even tonight, residents have no clear idea of what the bidder has in fact offered. Yet the council felt that it was right and proper last week to tweet that an exciting new sport provision was arriving at the approach. This is before the residents even had a chance to speak to the Cabinet tonight, and even before the Cabinet had voted on the bid. This seems to me to be undemocratic and an abusive process. Last year in a meeting with concerned residents, Councillor Crossley gave them a clear, unequivocal undertaking that golf or golf-derived activity would remain on the 18-hole course at the approach. There was therefore no need for a public consultation, he said. When pressed to explain what he meant by golf-derived activity, he became annoyed with the residents, saying he did not understand why they were harping on this point, because he was simply using the phrase as he felt that some people considered pitch and putt golf not to be true golf. He reiterated there would be no change of use on the 18-hole course. Residents naturally took him at his word. Any right-thinking person would consider that an arrangement whereby golfers are thrown off the course that they have used for the past 60 years in favor of a sport that involves throwing a disc at a net amounts to a change of use. Residents also understand that disc golf would also mean less maintenance of the approach, leaving extensive unkempt areas, which will make it much more difficult for parents, children, dog walkers, and alpine walkers to use the approach safely. But presumably providing excellent places to throw beer cans, used needles, and condoms. In summary, I strongly urge the Cabinet to reject the bid and to pause, at least until the pandemic is over. It is commercial madness, in my view, to rush to accept the only offer that is on the table at a time like this, particularly when the proposal is almost universally opposed by residents and golfers alike. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Justin. Do I have anybody who wishes to ask a factual question of the speaker? So thank you again for your statement. Obviously that will be taken into account, and the points that you've made I'm sure will be addressed during the discussion. Next on my list is Emilio Pimentel-Reid. Emilio?
Hello, can everyone hear me?
I can, and now I can see you too.
Amazing. Hi, I'm Emilio Pimentel-Reid. In normal times, I enjoy visiting our welcoming local park up to 3 times a day for my health and well-being. I am also the chair of the Friends of the High Common, a stakeholders group started in January 2019, and asked the cabinet to reject this bid. For those who aren't yet members, the Friends of the High Common was set up to protect our welcoming and inclusive local green space for all those who use it regularly, including golfers, dog owners, Nordic walkers, children, the elderly, and others in our community. Our aim is to maintain the happy coexistence, which has been in place for decades, and to ensure the park is responsibly managed and not threatened by inappropriate activities. We have been trying to engage constructively with the council for 2 years, and for the last 18 months, the council has just stopped listening to us or engaging positively with the local community. Given that I and other residents have been trying to discuss our concerns with the council, this attempt at a fait accompli appears to be a deliberate effort by Baines to impose a decision which they know local residents will not agree with. We met with Paul Crossley in July 2019 to express our worries about the future of the park. We also held at least 2 further meetings in 2019 with senior Baines Council officials, Mandy Bishop, Mark Higgins, and others, to seek to explain to them how the park is actually used by residents. We offered to engage constructively with the council to ensure all stakeholders were considered in future decisions. The council is well aware of residents' strong attachment and love of the park, which makes the current actions in refusing to consult even more extraordinary. It appears to me that the council have deliberately sought to not engage. This is a shocking way for any council to behave. As a group, we understand the council would like to encourage more people to use the High Common, but unlike Entry Hill, they somehow don't bother to ask us how we would like to use the park. This doesn't make sense. Golfers are members of the park community. They are about to be chalked off the approach golf course after 60 years. Most people would regard a golf course being replaced by something other than a golf course as a material change of use. Moreover, this is a very bad time to seek best value on the approach golf course in the middle of the pandemic. The council is unlikely to be getting the best response when the outdoor leisure sector is so depressed. This appears to be a fire sale. Even our local councillors now understand this bid must be rejected and have followed our campaign not to accept this bid. At this point, the rational, sensitive thing to do when there's a major decision affecting so directly the lives of local residents in the middle of a pandemic is to pause. Thank you for your time and for rejecting the bid.
Thank you very much, Emilio. Is there anybody who has any factual questions to ask? So as I've said before to all the other speakers, obviously your comments and any points that you have made that need addressing will be picked up in the discussion. So thank you again for your statement, and please watch us on YouTube and you can see the discussion as it happens. Thank you. I'd now like to ask Lynn Jacobs if she would like to make her statement.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm a local resident and I'm a user asking Cabinet to reject the bid and open it up under a different rule once we're freed of COVID restrictions. Last year, Paul Crossley stated that the current procurement process operated under OJEU regulations, which are not now applicable in the UK. The new procurement process could allow public access far more detailed. We've been denied information about the bid, the bidder, or the length of the contract, other than a statement by Paul Crossley that the future group use would be golf or golf related. We've been denied consultation on the basis that there would not be a change of use on approach, hence no need to consult. No professional golf operator has bid for the contract, so we have to assume that this item term of golf or golf related has very little meaning. High Common occupies a beautiful green space, a green lung in the west of Bath, where groups of people have enjoyed sport and leisure for over 60 years and in harmony. In 2016, Baines had a green space strategy that recognised the value of parks and other spaces to the lives of residents, and importantly, offered a context against which future investment, and spending decisions should be made. That 2016 principle is relevant here today. As this exercise was prompted by the need to stem losses, I assume the bidder sees a way of making a profit. And as golf is not seen as profitable right now, I think we can be pretty sure that the game of golf will not be central to his operation. Throwing a metal frisbee into a can will be. Well, is this really golf related? Are games described here as family fun appropriate at this site? And does this measure up to Paul Crossley's promise? They appeal to a different demographic and leave little room for the genuine golf community. If it was your intention to change the use of the approach course, why didn't you say so and consult to find out what people really want from their green space, instead of creating dismay and anger amongst the local community? So please reject the bid, consult to get some facts, listen to local people and research the future of the golf post-pandemic. Low-level maintenance until such an equitable solution is reached. Please, right now, do not be the administration that closes the last public golf course in Baines at a time when outdoor leisure activity for all ages is so critical to well-being. I'm reminded of a quote from Edmund Burke for you. Representatives are not merely delegates of people, but rather trustees of the public good. Well, surely this issue is indeed about the public good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lynn, for your statement. I'm just going to check if there are any factual questions. I am not seeing anybody who wishes to ask you a question. In that case, then your statement, like the others, will be taken into account in our discussion. So thank you again for your contribution. I'd now like to ask Robert Sumner.
Madam Chairman, I received an email with apology from Robert. I can send.
Oh, sorry, I've made it. I've made it.
Oh, correct. Sorry.
Well,
apologies.
Welcome, Robert.
Yeah, hello. Hopefully you can hear me. So just in short, my name's Robert Sumner, and I'm making a representation in my capacity really as primarily as a local resident of the area. I live on Park Street. With a direct view onto the High Common and Approach Golf Course. But also I'm treasurer of the Cavendish Road Society and I own a local art gallery in Margaret's Buildings. My own house overlooks the Approach Golf Course, High Common, and my 3 children, young children, myself and my wife, do make extensive use of the beautiful and natural space for relaxation as well as the golf course. And in fact, many of our friends and their kids make extensive use of it. And, we genuinely feel that our kids are able to connect with nature and the space in, a very important way, and it's part of our general well-being. And the idea that sort of any other form of family fun would somehow trump that is just an absolute myth. I would urge the Cabinet to reject the only bid, which has been made for the golf course, and to pause the whole process really of finding an operator for the course, because I just think it's an incredibly bad time to make a decision anyway. At least until the pandemic is over and we can return to normal life, and transparent consultation with those individuals whose lives it directly affects. As a local businessman with an art gallery in Margaret's Buildings, I'm also aware of the abundance of local passion for the High Common, and recent discussions with individuals and locals concerning its future have always come to the same conclusion, which is to leave this beautiful space alone. I'm worried at the council's plan to change the character of the Approach Golf Course and strongly object to the proposals for change. In 1830, the Grade 1 listed Royal Victoria Park was laid out as a landscape garden in the tradition of Capability Brown and Repton, with appropriate tree planting and garden buildings, which included the bandstand, the Gothic farmhouse, of course, the Victoria monument, and many garden ornaments, some of which were added later. The High Common, obviously, which we're talking about in the context of the Approach golf course, was clearly part of that scheme. And as can be witnessed by the layout and the tree planting, by the opposing gates of the golf course and the park, and indeed the plans, which I've got copies of actually. It's particularly important as it incorporates the landscape garden tradition in an urban setting for the enjoyment of the local people in Bath, bringing to the reality the concept of Rus in Urbe. The Royal Victoria Park and the golf course are within the Bath World Heritage Site. And in light of this, the original historic landscape design of what is now the golf course needs to be kept in place undisturbed, and its importance as an integral part of the Royal Victoria Park recognised and protected. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert, and I'm very glad you were able to join us to make your statement. And obviously, your comments will be taken into account when we come to this item. I'm just checking if anybody had a question for you, and I'm not seeing anybody, in which case then I will move on to Rachel Hushen, who I believe is the last of our speakers on this item. So Rachel, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm making this statement as Chair of Lansdowne Crescent Association, and we would ask that you decide not to proceed with the preferred bidder for the Approach Golf Course High Common. Our ward councillors, Lucy Hodge and Mark Elliott, both members of your party, are very hard-working and respected by many in our community. Simply put, we trust their judgment. If they tell us that the council's preferred bidder for the High Common approach should not proceed, then we feel that you should trust their judgment too. They, like many of the residents from all backgrounds who surround the High Common and the Approach golf course, understand that many people use the space daily. Many have done so for decades. There is a harmonious coexistence of golfers, some simply for pitch and putt, walkers, dog walkers, alpine walkers, and children enjoying it in the summer months and the winter months. Any divergence from this existing use is a change of use, and it should involve careful public consultation. This is not an unloved, underused, unviable piece of land to be signed away for up to 20 years without careful consideration. It is a beautiful space which is loved. It's full of trees which are protected under tree protection orders. It is traversed with many public footpaths, and it's in the heart of a World Heritage setting. Decisions regarding its future should be made carefully and wisely. Any decision to approve the bidder tonight would be opaque. It would be done without local consultation and potentially without understanding the impacts on public access or on the protected trees. I use the term potentially because we've not been permitted to see the details of the tender. With regard to the tender, you as Cabinet members may have been told that there is time after the consultation, after tonight's decision. But this is not meaningful real consultation because it wouldn't materially affect the bidder's tender as set out in the council papers. I'd like to refer you, okay, clause 1.3 says, once a bidder is appointed, they will engage with the local community on their proposals before contracts are signed, but the tender will, however, have to remain substantially similar to that submitted and evaluated. So therefore, I ask you to listen to our ward councillors and your colleagues in Lansdowne Ward. Pause, maintain the common in the current low-level way until pandemic restrictions lift. Do not rush into a decision which cannot be undone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. And I'm just checking if any Cabinet has any question for you. And I'm not seeing anybody who has. So thank you for your comments. And please watch the rest of the this item and indeed the rest of the meeting if you wish to on YouTube. So thank you again for your comments. Okay, so before I invite Paul to, or Councillor Crossley to introduce this item, I'm going to first confirm whether or not we will be going into exempt session. We do not need to go into exempt session. We can stay in the public session if we do not refer to any of the information in the exempt papers. So can I just confirm that we will not be going into exempt session? Okay. Thank you very much. In which case then, I now invite Councillor Crossley to introduce the item, please.
Right, thank you very much, Chair. I hope you can hear me. I'm looking down at my notes now, so I won't be looking at the screen. I'd like to just go through all the speakers, and thank you very much to all the speakers who've given up their time to come tonight. A lot of the points you made will be made in my substantive item, so I'll just come up with some of the points that have been raised. There does seem to be, and I've picked up the message loud and clear, that there's a lot of fear about the concept of disc golf. In fact, some people talked about metal frisbees, and I'd never heard of metal frisbees before. And I have been doing some looking on the internet as we talk, and I can't find the metal frisbee. So if metal frisbees are an option, I apologise. I never knew about them. It was all plastic, is all that has ever been taught to me. A lot of people talked about rejecting the bid. You'll find out when we get to my speech what I'm proposing. A lot of people talked about golf as being elitism. It might well have been in the past, but can I assure everyone that now all the golf clubs that surround the city of Bath and are in the Bath and North East Somerset are very welcoming to all players of all standards and standing, because they want people to go to their club to play golf. So it might have been a case in the past that golf clubs were deemed to be unwelcoming to non-members. I can assure you that is not the case in modern days. All golf clubs are very welcoming of people turning up and wanting to play. Another points were made. A lot of people said reject the bids, do not proceed, not welcoming. A lot of people seem to be getting the impression that somehow the place was going to be closed off. I'll be answering that in my main speech. Ben Reid, thank you very much for your offer. I'm more than happy to meet with you and talk to you on that. And I do agree that the interpretation of what I said in May was correct, that we were looking to keep golf, traditional golf, on the 18 hole, and whether we could get someone or not. And the fact is we've got to where we are tonight, which is a motion to accept or reject the one bid we have on offer. So I'll now go to my prepared speech. And I want to start by thanking Lucy Hodge, Mark Elliott, all the speakers, and those who have written to me with their views on the future of the Approach Golf Course. Your passion and respect for the value of this area is evident. In particular, I note the petition presented by Mr. Reid to keep Bath Approach Course open and the number of people who signed it. And can I tell you, the approach course is important to everyone, not just the people that have written in. It's a very much loved piece of land. Whilst the decision on the future of High Common is delegated to the Cabinet member, I've always made clear that this matter must be considered in an open Cabinet meeting to enable public participation in the process. This evening's Cabinet meeting is about whether or not a preferred bidder is appointed. If one is appointed, they'll be required to engage meaningfully with the community before any final decision is made. And a final decision could still be that you didn't proceed. For those who are not familiar with the process, I want to explain that to ensure a fair and legal process, the Council is not able to comment during a live procurement, which is the current position. If we had been allowed to comment, we would have corrected the many false myths and misunderstandings of our intentions. I'd like to highlight just a few points in relation to these. There has never been any intention to prevent public access to the site. There has never been any intention to limit any other recreational activities enjoyed by those using this space. There has never been any intention of selling the site. The only intention was to enhance this important part of green infrastructure for the city, for all residents and visitors, and for the environment. The council has run a robust procurement process to find a golf or golf-derived operator for the site. And it's quite clear from some of the comments that we can have a debate and discussion about whether disc golf and traditional golf are completely and utterly different. We have only sought bids that, as a minimum, maintain community access to the site, enhance the current facilities, including the cafe, deliver a continuation of golf on the site or activity that is broadly similar in nature and visual impact, retain the area as a green space. We have proactively engaged with golf companies. This is the second time a procurement process has taken place for viable golf solution at the approach. This was done in 2015 under the previous administration, and to take up a point from several of the speakers, in much better economic times, and again in 2020. And despite these proactive actions, no viable golf bid has been received. And we will later debate the council's challenging medium-term financial position. Discretionary services such as leisure must aim to deliver financially sustainable solutions. Golf at the approach has required significant subsidy from the council for some time now. Any outcome from today must be affordable, meet the council's desired outcomes, as well as the needs of the community. I know my cabinet colleagues have considered the tender report carefully. I would like to again thank the community and the cabinet for the comments and contributions to the discussions. And after consideration and listening to all the debate, I'd like the cabinet to note that despite wide publication of the tender, we have only had one bid that is not a golf bid. We have not received any golf bids from the two tender exercises. Whilst this one bid is proceedable, we are not satisfied that there are sufficient benefits to commit to a long-term solution. I therefore move that new 2.1, that whilst this bid is proceedable, the cabinet are not satisfied that there are sufficient benefits to commit to a long-term solution and will not be appointing Company A. New 2.2, that the High Common is retained as public open space, which should increase the range of informal uses on the site, and delete 2.3. I so move.
Thank you very much, Councillor Crossley. Do I have a seconder for the motion, the new motion?
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Councillor Samuel, would you like to also speak now?
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you, Cabinet. In seconding the recommendations to this report, I need to say right at the outset that the Council has followed a scrupulous public procurement process that is governed by current UK law. This may not have been fully understood by some members of the public, but it really is not legally possible for the Council to issue public comment on the conduct of a tender process during its course. I'm going to repeat that. It is not possible for the Council to publicly comment on a tender during its course. This is a really important point. As the Cabinet member responsible for finance and procurement, I've worked alongside my colleague, Councillor Crossley, to ensure that a fair, legal and transparent process has taken place, and I am satisfied that it has. This was an open tender process, which means that unlike restricted tenders, where a particular outcome is sought, the Council was seeking market interest in the provision of services to the two former golf course sites of Entry Hill and the High Common. Now, the Cabinet will be aware that, at least prior to the pandemic, declining interest in golf meant that this was now a loss-making site, and the purpose of the tender was to seek interest in alternatives. However, the provision of golf services was not ruled out, and indeed efforts were made to encourage tenderers to submit tenders. Councillor Crossley has taken on the challenge of turning loss-making uses of the Council's land into profitable ones. And as the Cabinet will see later in the context of the budget I will be introducing later on, This council no longer has the luxury of providing services that cost local taxpayers money. I therefore support and celebrate his endeavours in trying to bridge that gap. Now, the recommendations we are moving tonight reflect the outcome of the tender process and nothing else. In the case of the approach site, the outcome has led us to conclude that market failures at present may well have deterred potential tenderers. The recommendation, therefore, as you have heard, is not to proceed with any service offers at present. The council will continue to maintain the land for the benefit of Bath North East Somerset residents until such time as it is deemed that any retendering should be considered. And of course, there is a considerable degree of uncertainty about the economic prospects, particularly for the leisure sector at the moment, which has been one of the sectors most badly hit by the pandemic. Now, residents should be in no doubt whatsoever that this beautiful, wonderful space is not under threat from development or restrictions. It will remain as public open space available to all to enjoy in perpetuity. And what I'd like to say finally is if local residents are committed to the future of High Common, then I would like to encourage them to engage with the council in forming an active Friends partnership, such as exists in my ward, working with the Parks Department in Hedgemead Park, where we and I volunteer to assist the council with the maintenance of the park in what is a very successful partnership. So, Chair, in seconding this recommendation, I do welcome the public involvement in this. It shows a great deal of interest, and when we come to vote, I'm sure we will come to the same conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Samuel. I have several people who wish to speak on this item, and I will take them in the order that I have received their requests. So, Councillor Warren.
I just wanted to ask Councillor Crossley whether he has any information on the sort of chemicals that are usually used to maintain a golf green. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Warren. Let me just get my note open. Right. To maintain a golf course, many chemicals are used, and certainly one of the original bidders that was thinking of applying for the approach and entry hill was actually talking about how you could move away from a chemical-based golfing solution, and he was talking in terms of a transition period of 4 to 5 years to move from a system where you use chemicals to a system where you completely use natural products. But the fairways at the moment on the golf, well, not this year because we haven't been playing golf, we've just been maintaining the grass. But the fairways are sprayed once a year to treat the daisies, usually around May. And we get a contractor called GWC in to spray a product called Turf Elite, supplied by Headland Agrochemicals, which contains the active ingredients MCPA, diacamba, and Mecoprop P, basically a herbicide. The greens are treated twice a year with NPK fertilizer and twice a year with iron sulfide. Now, the interesting thing on that is that MCPA is a powerful selective phenoxy herbicide, and it's listed in the WHO as a chemical hazard in drinking water. Diacamba is from Monsanto, which I think is famous for its dispute over glyphosate, and it contains glyphosate. Dicamba is a benzoic acid herbicide and containing glyphosate. Glyphosate is being banned or restricted or controlled in many countries around the world. And in fact, in our own authority, we have an active policy to reduce the use of glyphosate very rapidly in everything except dangerous weeds such as giant hogweed and a couple other things which respond to nothing else. And Mecoprop P is just basically a mild weed and feed type product. So in answer to your question, MCPA, a selective phenoxy herbicide, and diacamba, another herbicide containing glyphosate.
Thank you very much, Councillor Crossley. I'd like to ask Councillor Tim Ball to make his contribution, please.
Thank you. Like Councillor Crosley, I've received several emails on the approach golf course High Common. The land was bequeathed to the council by the Freeman legacy on the 13th of August 1879, and for many years was just an open parkland for everyone to enjoy. The golf franchise was introduced just before World War II. Under the terms of the bequest, this was acceptable, but did mark the commercialisation of the space. What's impressed me by so many comments is that you do not want the space commercialised. Golf, whether it's traditional form or a variant of this. It's also noticeable during the pandemic, far more people enjoyed this open space and far more people have dogs and like to exercise on the space. I know many residents are not good walking on the space when golf balls were flying around, and now enjoy strolls throughout the whole area. I'll be far happier with a proposal going forward that we revert the original intention of the bequest and have this parkland as open space. It is not commercialised and is enjoyed for its beauty and its views. Less intensive management, particularly the end of chemical use, will allow the greensward on the High Common to flourish again. It is good for the bees as it is for us. It also aligns with our commitments of addressing the climate and biological emergencies we face as a society. I'm therefore very happy to accept Councillor Crosley's recommendation. In conclusion, I would like to thank not just the residents, particularly Councillors Hodge and Elliott, but also the bidder who submitted his bid for consideration, and which has certainly sparked a lively debate.
Thank you, Tim. Yes, you're absolutely right about sparking a lively debate. Can I ask Councillor Appleyard, please, to make his contribution?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I think if this this pandemic has given us any insight, it's the fact that open spaces, the ability to go out into the fresh air, has proven to be so significant to so many of our residents. And I'm just trying to sort of unpick where we were at the beginning of this. And I think the whole idea of the exercise, or it started out, was when we were looking at the budget and we were looking at areas where we had to reduce our expenditure or the cost to try and balance the impact that the pandemic has actually had on our finances. And there's a whole nother story about that. So the intent was the right one. I'm really pleased that Councillor Crossley has actually laid out the fact it was never about closing the access to the common. It was purely down to looking at the golf provision on that site, which was costing us as ratepayers quite a sum of money. And I'm particularly pleased that Councillor Crossley is looking to focus on that, because likewise, I then have the challenges on my portfolio to actually look at trying to make those savings to pay for the money we're spending on the golf provision. What I am actually really happy about is the fact that there's over 4,000 people that feel passionate that golf should remain on the common, and that should hopefully convert into a usage which will then make the golf on that site actually cover its face. People will make their own judgment on the type of information that they've actually received or how people have interpreted the information. It's been out there on all social media that the council could not comment on the activity of a tender while it was still in process. And I'd seen this many times. But unfortunately, some people have decided not to know that. So those people that have signed those petitions and everything like that will review on the basis that they made when they did that on the information they got. But what I will say, their passion for actually retaining the golf on that site, I think is the right one. But I don't think we should expect the whole authority, all the other residents, to actually pay for that. And at least the usage of golf should actually pay for itself by those users. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Appleyard. Councillor Wood.
Yeah, I'd like to acknowledge the work that Councillor Crossley's put into this issue and also to the other course as well and his officers. I think I'd also like to thank Councillors Hodge and Councillor Elliott for their sterling work in representing their residents on this issue, and the people themselves who signed the petition and been vocal about this and shown their great interest in this site. A number of speakers earlier made reference to the Lib Dem 2019 election manifesto, our commitment and our pledge to be a listening council. I'm glad that we're taking the course of action that we are and rejecting this tender and proving that we are a listening council.
Thank you very much, Dave. I'm not seeing any other speakers, so before I turn back to Councillor Crossley to sum up, I'd just like to echo the points that Councillor Wood made, particularly the thanks to Councillor Crossley and the various officers that have been involved in this issue, and also the one for Entry Hill as well, and also the thanks to Councillors Hodge and Councillor Elliott as well. And I hope that those watching this meeting this evening will see that proof that we have listened and we have taken on board what people's concerns and indeed their various comments, and will agree that the recommendation that is now before us, that we do not proceed to the next step with the preferred bidder, is the right one to take at this time. So I now ask Councillor Crossley to sum up, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I think a lot of the points that were made were reinforcement of some of the points that I made, and I answered Councillor Warren's question about the chemicals fully separately before you asked me. Open space is important, and I would just like to reiterate what Councillor Samuel said. This is open space in perpetuity, and it was interesting the facts that we got from Tim Ball mentioning, going back into 1890 or 1860 or whatever date it was he mentioned. I haven't got all the notes down, but it's been open space for a long time, and it will remain open space for a long time, open to everyone. And really the argument is, do we want any commercialization on this part of land? And I did get nearly 100 emails from residents. I think I've replied to everyone. If I've missed anyone out, please accept my apologies now. It has been a busy few days. I will check my inbox to check I haven't missed anyone, and you will all be getting a summary of my speech and the outcome following this. But what I can say is, in answer to one point that was made, that this used to make profits, we can go back in the records to 2009-10, and since 2009-10, the course has only made a profit in 1 year, and that was in 10-11. So it is not correct to say that it used to be a big profit centre. Obviously, I can't talk about before 2009, but from 2009, so that's 11 years now, it made a profit in 1 year, and the rest it didn't make a profit. So moving forward, we're not going to move into a different provider, a different type of bid there. The phrase that we got from several speakers was pause, rest, don't take up the offer, pause. The word pause came up on a lot of speakers. And so that is exactly what we're doing. We are pausing. As Councillor Samuel say, we will maintain the open space so that options remain possible for the future. But at this point in time, we are not going for any new tender offer. And when we come to the future and do or don't decide to look again, then I can absolutely assure you, we've heard the comment this time, and next time nothing will start without a big consultation. I do regret that we've had a misunderstanding about whether this golf is or isn't substantially different in planning terms from traditional golf. and I won't get into an argument or reignite that. What, you know, we obviously have different views on that, but I'm delighted the Cabinet seems to be prepared to back my position up completely, that we have, if I just get the words up again, if I just remind you what you're voting for, we're deleting 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3 as in the public papers and replacing them with new 2.1, that whilst this bid is proceedable, the Cabinet are not satisfied there are sufficient benefits to commit to a long-term solution and will not be appointing Company A. A new 2.2, that the High Common is retained as public open space, which should increase the range of informal uses on the site. I so moved. Well, we've moved it before, and now we can go to the vote. Thank you very much, Cabinet.
Thank you very much, Councillor Crossley. So we now come to the vote, and I will call you each in turn to ask you if you wish to vote for or against the motion as proposed by Councillor Crossley. Councillor
And seconded by Samuel.
And seconded by Councillor Samuel. Councillor Appleyard.
For.
Councillor Ball.
Very strange, say this for.
Thank you. Councillor Butters.
For.
Councillor Crossley.
For.
Councillor Guy.
For.
Councillor Samuel.
For.
Councillor Warren.
For.
Councillor Wood.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
And myself, I am also for this motion. I believe this motion is carried unanimously, Jack?
That's correct, Madam Chairman. Unanimous for.
Thank you. So I'm now going to move on to item 12, after which I will ask for a short break. So I have two speakers for this item, and so I will call them in turn to make their statements. Can I see if Liz Hallam is here? Lovely.
Good evening.
Good evening to you, and thank you for your patience. Would you like to make your statement? You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. On behalf of Entry Hill golfers and the golf bid, good evening. My carbon footprint increased finding an alternative to the closed Entry Hill, but what a find. 9 holes, handicap rated, affordable, tee times filled from early morning until late afternoon, 7 days a week. A welcoming family concern, profitable, attracting all ages to course and cafe. You can have this in Bath. You have a gem at Entry Hill, yet every public statement, even the Lemon Gazelle survey, has been prefaced with talk of declining numbers and financial losses. So I ask you, what level of mismanagement have you overseen? What chemical damage have you done? What burden have you imposed on council taxpayers, even part paying a council officer for oversight? I am so worried that you have been misled about the prospects for Entry Hill. Worried because I can hear you have that old-fashioned view that golf courses are green deserts. You are not aware of golfers' care for the environment, their work with wildlife organisations. Worried you were unaware of the golf bid's liaison with local residents keen to maintain free community access to this site. Horrified by the bold announcement on Walk Ride Bath social media page, 95% certainty that Bath will have a mountain bike course, 3 such bids, golf is the lowest rated option of all. A bike park was unaffordable in July. So has the council bowed to pressure from a nationwide online survey to subsidise its construction? What about the many signature golf petition? How alarming that information from your secretive process became public at this very late stage, sprung on a totally unprepared community where it was the least popular option. The other bid presumably Forest of the Imagination, heralded itself as a major new visitor attraction. A park was a popular survey option, yet how much free access will be available? Be honest.
Seconds.
Are you in danger of asking councillors, taxpayers to be responsible for grabbing grants and taking loans to construct what might be a white elephant? Are you about to cause years of upheaval to a settled community in pursuit of a major attraction? In these cash-strapped times, most residents will prefer you to concentrate all your resources on the stewardship of this heritage city, steadily becoming defaced by graffiti and litter. I feel residents might prefer the success of my present golf club recreated at Entry Hill. A cost-free, simple solution to a self-inflicted problem.
Thank you very much, Liz. Are there any questions for our speaker from Cabinet? No. So thank you for your statement. Obviously, your comments will be taken into account when we
I hope so.
Discuss the item. Can I ask if is it Katina Beckett?
Yeah, that's me. Hi.
Hi. Would you like to make your statement, please? You have
Yes,
3
please.
minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Dina and Cabinet members. I am the chair of the Entry Hill Community Association, and I am speaking on behalf of the Entry Hill residents. Our neighbourhood has had much to discuss over the last year, with the future of the golf course site right at the top of the list. For the past 12 months, Entry Hill Golf Course has provided some of the key elements of what the local and wider community had requested for an inclusive, open community space. It has been a shame that in the midst of COVID, where golf was one of the few sports allowed, our site was closed to golf. However, people of all ages have appreciated the benefits of having this wonderful green lung and a safe place to exercise on the doorstep of local residents. Whether your passion is golf, wildlife preservation, or nature spotting, the Entry Hill site has provided it. Families, dog walkers, solo walkers, and budding young artists, all coexisting and enjoying our conservation area. We hope that the OJU process has taken into consideration in both its deliberations and scorings the views of the local residents at the Odd Down drop-in event and the Lemon Gazelle online consultation, which both showed clear, strong support for what the Bath and wider community residents hope for in a local facility, a community park and cafe with walking and running trails. And the Golf Ladies local petition with 1,000 signatures did show support for golf to remain at the site. We have been appreciative to those bidders who took the opportunity to talk to us and better understand the Entry Hill community. We will continue to work wherever possible to make sure that our key local amenity is a positive contribution to building a genuine livable neighbourhood. We now hope that Entry Hill will receive a viable amenity appropriate for all ages and ability. Whoever the preferred bidder is, they do need to understand that we are a community who cherishes our green oasis on the site. And so we request that Cabinet and the process ensure that we can engage with the preferred bidder at the first opportunity, as it is the local neighbourhood and our wider community who will be the most affected by the Cabinet's decision tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katina. Do I have any factual questions to ask of our speaker? In which case, may I say thank you to you for your statement, and obviously we'll be taking your words into consideration when we come to the item and the discussion. And please watch the rest of the meeting, in fact, mostly obviously this item, on YouTube. So thank you again. So I now would like to ask Cabinet if you are minded to stay in public session. And if so, can I remind you all that you must not refer to any of the detail that is covered in the confidential papers. So would you agree with me that we will stay in public session? So all those in favour? Thank you. In that case, we will stay in public session. So I now turn to Councillor Crossley to introduce this report, please.
Just getting my notes up. Right, thank you very much, Chair. There's lots of bits of paper. I apologise for that, with different notes on the speakers. Thank you very much to Liz Hallam and Katrina Beckett for their input. I've had many meetings with Liz and golfers, and they've always struck me as passionate, committed, and very resourceful and very committed to their golf. And it's good to see everyone committed to their sports. I think sport is a very important part of our life. However, it's also a fact that life changes as we go along. And Liz said that a bike park is unaffordable. Without saying whether this tender is for a bike park or not, you know, we've got to look at the costs that were the costs were a key part of what we were looking at between all the tenders that we got, and all the tenders we got would have submitted their own viability assessments. Katrina Beckett talked about families, walkers, artists enjoying the space. That is also key. And people keep sort of saying, well, free entry. Well, when there was golf there, you had to play and go golf on it. So you could also walk around it without playing golf. So nothing is different under any thing that we're looking at. It is free if you want to walk across it, walk around it. But if you want to use the facility, whatever that facility is, then you pay for it. And that was the same with golf. And it would be the same with whatever tender we move to. So I'd now like to move to my speech. Encouraging and enabling people to be active is one of the most effective and sustainable ways to improve lives and confront inequality. Especially now, there is a need to invest in sport and physical activity to make it a regular part of life for everyone and make lives better across Bath and North East Somerset. Based on achieving these outcomes, we made the decision in July 2020 to run an open procurement exercise to seek a new operator for the Entry Hill Golf Course. We sought bids that are inclusive, environmentally friendly, that ensure a sustainable financial future and offer an improved experience for local people. The process, which started in August 2020, only considered bids of a sporting or community provision nature. The council has never considered anything other than this type of provision. A community consultation on the future of the site was undertaken between December 2019 and March 2020, and involved carrying out substantial stakeholder engagement to understand the views of residents, golf course users, and those who would like to use the site. The consultation ignited considerable local interest from the local residents and organisations, with a range of exciting proposals coming forward. It is acknowledged that people from within and from outside of Bath took an interest and responded to the survey. To ensure local views were understood and considered, an addendum to the consultation report was produced and published alongside it, which analysed only Bath and North East Somerset residents' responses. There were 1,762 responses with valid BAINS postcoded, stating they were BAINS residents, over 50% of which were from postcodes very local to the course. This highlighted that the majority of people strongly supported a family cycle centre, while other popular options that were supported or strongly supported were trails or for walking and running, and a park with a cafe. I'd like to thank everyone who took part in the consultation and recognise the passion and commitment that people have for their own preferred sport. The site has historically required a considerable subsidy by the council and has experienced declining usage. COVID-19 has had a significant impact on the council's finances, and the leisure sector is no different. This has impacted decisions making because there are a greater need to ensure financial viability for all our leisure sites. This situation has led to the Entry Hill and approach courses remaining closed during this time. 5 bidders submitted final tenders for Entry Hill. all of which addressed the recommendations of the consultation and priorities of Council, which are to contribute to climate and ecological emergency goals, getting more people more active, and ensuring there is a leisure provision for all members of the community in the future through removing the subsidy requirement to the Council. Due to commercial sensitivities and in line with the tender procedure, details of bidders and their proposals are not made public until preferred bidders have been appointed. At this stage of the procurement process, Cabinet has the option of appointing the highest scoring bidder or choosing not to proceed with the process. If a decision to appoint is made, then following the legally required completion of the 10-day standstill period, the details of the bid will be made public. As I highlighted on the previous item, discretionary services such as leisure must aim to deliver financially sustainable solutions. Golf at Entry Hill has required significant subsidy from the Council for some time now. Any outcome from today must be affordable, meet the Council's desired outcomes, as well as the needs of the community. One bid exceeded all others in responding to the brief and offering a facility with a range of leisure outcomes and community involvement, and that is Company E. Final statement. I therefore move to appoint Company E as the preferred bidder, and details of the bid will be made public after the standstill period of 10 days. Once appointed, the preferred bidder will engage with the community on their proposals and what happens next. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Crossley. Do I have a seconder for the proposal? Councillor Samuel?
There we are. In seconding this item, I repeat my comments when seconding the previous item, that this was a scrupulous tender process that was conducted, that was guided by the law. The tender process, as you've heard, sought expressions of interest in the provision of services on the land that we are calling Entry Hill. And six tenders were received and were evaluated against most economically advantageous criteria, and those other criteria set out prior to tender. And this is standard process. And as you can see within the report, each tender is scored and appraised against known criteria available to each tenderer. The scoring system is set out in 3.5 and is a combination of price and quality. And this is standard in public sector procurement activity. Sometimes tenders are issued on the basis, invitations tenders are issued on the basis of price alone, but it is legally possible to have combinations of price and quality and bring those together to create an award. Now, as I also previously indicated, the Council simply cannot conduct a dialogue with the public during the course of a tender. That stage has to be concluded prior to invitation to tender. That is the appropriate time to do so, and the report contains lots of information about the public engagement and market testing that took place prior to the invitation to tender. So I am satisfied, as the Cabinet member responsible for procurement and that financial regulations were followed, and that we're wholly compliant with the law and guidance. So in conclusion, as I said before, this council is no longer sadly able to support loss-making ventures on its land. And one of the original purposes of this process was to see if we could animate the land in whatever way the private sector was able to respond to our invitations to tender. And that's the outcome that Councillor Crossley has described in moving the recommendations. So I am happy to second this recommendation. I think it does everything it says on the tin. It was a properly conducted process, and I invite the Cabinet to comment on it if they wish. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel. So I now open the discussion to the rest of Cabinet, if anyone has any additional comments that they wish to make. Okay. I'll just quickly scan through to the other screen in case I'm missing any hand there. In that case, then I'm not seeing anybody else who wishes to speak. So I would just like to add my voice supporting the recommendation. Like in the previous item, Councillor Crossley and officers have worked hard to find an option that meets the community's wishes with willing providers, ones who would fulfil the brief to run an operation supporting more people to be more active more often, but without the subsidy from the council. And I think what is before us now meets this brief, and I look forward to the engagement exercise that the preferred bidder will undertake with the community. So Councillor Crossley, do you have any additional words to sum up?
No.
Thank you. In that case, now I will move to the vote, and I will find my list of everybody in the right order. So I will now ask you all in turn whether you support or not the motion before you. Councillor Appleyard.
For.
Councillor Ball.
For.
Councillor Butters.
For.
Councillor Crossley.
For.
Councillor Guy.
For.
Councillor Samuel.
For.
Councillor Warren. I'll come back to Councillor Warren. I know sometimes there's a problem with connection. Councillor Wood.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
Councillor Warren.
For.
Thank you. And myself, I am also for the motion. I believe, again, that is a unanimous decision.
That's
Jack.
correct. Excuse me. That is correct, Madam Chairman. It's unanimous. For.
Thank you. As I indicated before this item, I would like to now call for a 5-minute break before we then come back to the agenda, which will be agenda item 13, preparing for the future programme. So can I ask all of Cabinet and all officers if they can turn their videos and microphones off and then have the 5-minute break. Thank you. So Jack, I'm just checking, are we ready to proceed?
Hi, let me just check. I think everybody's back. Yes.
I'm only out to get a backup battery. My iPad's just about to die.
Okay, Paul. Well, if I make a start then, and obviously you'll still be able to listen and to be heard, and we will see you once you have your device properly sorted. Okay, so welcome back everybody. We are now moving on to the 13th item on our agenda, which is preparing for the future programme. So I'd like to invite Councillor Samuel to introduce the report and to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Well, in introducing this report, I'm going to state the obvious. The pandemic has had a fundamental way on the way we organise our staff to provide services. During the past year, we've had over 1,000 staff home working, and this has posed a major challenge to our IT systems, as well as establishing wholly new patterns of work. We are no different to every other business in the UK who has also had to adapt, but this has forced a major rethink about how we use office space and how we organise it. The Council's Preparing for the Future programme sets out how we intend to proceed. Now, during the pandemic, an early management strategic decision was made to maximise the use of Keynsham Civic Centre, and many other decisions flow from that, which is set out in the report. The report sets out the next steps, and after the report's been seconded, I'm suggesting that we ask Amanda George, the responsible director, to take us through the proposed changes prior to our agreement. The last thing I want to say is that resources have been allocated within the forthcoming budget, which is later on this agenda, and the figures are in 5.2 of the report. But before we start, I move the recommendations in paragraph 2.1.
Thank you, Richard, for introducing this item, and also thank you to Amanda for the commentary that she will give in a moment. I think it is important that council staff are able to work in an environment that best suits their individual needs. And for many, this has been working from home, but for some, this has proven to be much more of a challenge. And I think this challenge has undoubtedly changed as more people have been expected to work from home, and more so with the advent of each new lockdown. We know that Keynsham Civic Centre has not been used as effectively as it could be, and the Preparing for the Future programme delivers change which will allow more flexibility for our staff and take into account each individual person's needs. So I'd like to now invite Amanda George, if she would like to add her comments to this paper, and actually I should introduce Amanda George more appropriately. Amanda George is our Interim Director of Business Recovery. So thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. So this paper follows the Cabinet paper which was presented on the 10th of December 2020, which provided an update on the Property Services Service Review. And it also included a summary of the Preparing for the Future programme. So this paper provides further detail on this programme of work. The Council has for some time been reviewing the way that we work. So prior to COVID pandemic, progress had been made on plans to adapt Keynsham Civic Centre to improve utilisation, provide a more modern working environment, and create greater flexibility to enable more effective collaboration. But in common with many organisations, the pandemic has now accelerated the progress of these plans. A great deal has been learnt, both from our staff surveys that we did last year and also engaging with our staff about how staff have adapted to working flexibly during the last 10 months. And this has meant that we're able to now consider how a blended working approach where staff have the choice in how and where they work is possible for the future. The Preparing for the Future programme has many benefits for both the Council and staff as follows. An opportunity to allow blended working for most office-based staff, which will mean that they can organise their time and working location to benefit themselves, their team and their clients. For many staff, this will include a reduction in commuting stress, time and cost, and enable a better work-life balance. A breakdown of silo working between services and the opportunity for increased collaboration between teams, leading to improved staff morale, well-being and productivity. Greater flexibility and increased efficiency of staff who will be provided with the right IT equipment to complement the new ways of working. Reduced operating costs through a reduction of office buildings and a rationalisation of office space, along with the opportunity to create revenue through the commercial letting of Lewis House. An internal redesign of Keynsham Civic Centre, which will enhance the space, resolve some existing equalities issues, contribute towards climate change initiatives, and improve the capacity and efficiency of the office building across the week. Increased hot desking arrangements in some of our offices in the Guildhall for staff who need touchdown spaces in Bath. And reciprocal arrangements with our key partners so that staff have some options about where they work, which are not just at Keynsham Civic Centre, the Guildhall or at home. These options could also help to reduce travel time and cost for some staff and contribute to a better work-life balance. A communication change management and engagement plan is in place with staff. Regular written communications are issued to staff and a service user group is in place to allow full consultation with all service areas. The trade unions are also updated on a monthly basis. The focus for the next stage of the programme is on the redesign of Keynsham Civic Centre to increase capacity, maximise utilisation of the building and enable staff to work differently. The short-term investment plans associated with the redesign are set out in the report, and these costs will be recovered over time. The concept designs for the internal redesign of the building will be confirmed by the end of March, with the final designs and the technical specification for any works needed by the end of June. Whilst the designs are taking place, work will also take place to test prototypes and rearrange existing furniture to create activity-based working areas. So to summarise, the aim of the Preparing for the Future programme is to create a workspace that really enables modern and efficient service delivery and fully supports the needs of our staff and the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. So I now invite Cabinet members if they would like to make some comment. I have two requests from Councillor Wood to speak.
So I think one was from the previous item. So I really welcome this paper. It's a really forward-thinking way for the council to go, and I'm glad that it's emerged quite as quickly as it has. I think we've seen the necessity to do this because of the council's resources, a black hole left by COVID on an ongoing basis. But it's also the right thing to do. It allows our staff to work in a way that works for them, to have a greater work-life balance. And that's a very progressive thing for our council to have done. It's also great for me, living in North East Somerset, to see that staff will be based more increasingly from Keynsham. And I think if the Guildhall is the heart of Bath and North East Somerset, it's great to see Keynsham as the brain of our Bath and North East Somerset.
Nicely done, Councillor Wood. Are there any other comments? Otherwise, I will return back to Councillor Samuel to sum up.
Thank you, Chair. Well, this is an important report, as Councillor Wood has said, and there's been an enormous amount of work going on behind the scenes to deal with the pandemic and to look ahead to the future, to new patterns of work. Of course, the public see very little of this. This is not part of our public-facing activity, but it's really important to have good systems and good places to work so that we can provide good services to residents, which is really what it's all about. I think probably at some point, perhaps later in the year, it would be useful to, when the work has started at Keynsham, it would be useful to receive a further update so that we can show to our residents what progress we're making on these changes. But I'd like to thank Amanda and her team for the work she's done on this, and I commend this report to the Cabinet.
Thank you very much, Councillor Samuel. So we will now move to the vote. and I will take you all in alphabetical order once more. So please, could you indicate whether you are for or against this report? Councillor Appleyard.
For.
Councillor Ball.
For.
Councillor Butters.
For.
Councillor Crossley.
For.
Councillor Guy.
For.
Councillor Samuel.
For.
Councillor Warren.
For.
Councillor Wood.
Very much for.
Councillor Wright.
For.
And myself, I am also for the motion. I'm just want to check if Jack is still in the room. I thought I saw that he may have fallen out of the meeting.
Yeah, he's fallen out of the meeting.
Thank you, Mike. So can I confirm then with Michael Hewitt that we have all voted, and actually the vote is unanimous and for the motion?
I confirm that, Chair.
Thank you. Should we wait for a moment until Jack can rejoin us? And here is Jack.
My apology, my broadband went down. Sorry. What have I missed?
Well, we've all voted, and we voted all in favour of the motion. And we're now moving on to item 14.
Unanimous for.
It was unanimous, as confirmed by Michael. So we now move on to item 14, which is the budget and council tax for 2021-22 and the financial outlook. I would like to invite Councillor Samuel to introduce the report, please, and to remove the recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Well, this current year, 2021, has been an extraordinary year for our country. COVID has wreaked destruction and damage to our economy and our very way of life. And as of yesterday, nearly 115,000 people have died in the UK, with 4 million people testing positive for coronavirus. Job losses due to the pandemic, as we know, have amounted to nearly 1 million jobs. And the retail and hospitality sector have been particularly badly hit. In Bath and North East Somerset, where we have traditionally had strong dependence on visitor spending, the impact has been very serious. This is an emergency situation in every sense of the word, and one that has hit our council as hard as it has hit our residents and local businesses. As 2021 was a difficult year, I fully expect 21-22 to also be a very difficult year for the council's finances and the succeeding years till 2025. I do expect some recovery during this year, but we also need to be prepared for setbacks along the long road to normality. It was only 6 months ago that we were forced to introduce an emergency budget in the form of a financial recovery plan that aimed to save £20 million during the year and stabilise our finances. And I'm pleased to say that this decisive action has meant that the council is on course to balance the books in the current financial year. This is very important because had the council been forced to draw on its reserves this year, this would have left us very exposed in future years. I am bound at this point to say something about the support we have received from the government. Promises at the start of the pandemic made by Robert Jenrick MP, the local government minister, have turned out to be based on foundations of sand. He promised we would have all the resources we needed to tackle the pandemic. Well, so far, we have received unrestricted grants of £12 million from the government and expect to be able to claim back £18 million for income loss. However, this does not fully compensate our income shortfall, as the government scheme only provides 70% reimbursement and excludes all of the council's commercial income losses. This means that a 14 million shortfall exists that we have to make up by service cuts and, in the main, the slowing down of our capital programme. To sum this up, we have been shortchanged. So it's against this background we've been forced to plan for the next financial year. Much of the impact on the council has been the substantial loss of income it has experienced from the closure of our World Heritage assets such as the Roman baths and pump rooms. Other major losses have occurred from reductions in parking and other related transport income. And finally, our commercial estate, operating in the marketplace as it does, has seen a huge pressure on rental income. Tenants who have received inadequate support from the government have turned to us for help, whether through rent restructuring, payment deferments or defaults. And as businesses have ceased to trade, income has reduced, and for the moment, units remain difficult to let as private confidence has drained away. Business confidence measured by the CBI Business Confidence Index is now at -22. Well, this is better than the -87 recorded in Q2 last year, but it reflects not only the pandemic woes, but the double whammy of the Brexit chaos caused by the government's botched trade agreement. All of these factors mean that our planning assumptions for 21-2 have had to be downgraded as a starting point in building this budget. I made an early decision that given the extreme economic turbulence I have described, we should smooth the impacts of reduced income until the local and national economy recovered and income levels began to return to pre-COVID levels. If we had not taken this decision, we would be looking at making £20 million of cuts on top of those we made only 6 months ago. And I was clear at the time that this would have been difficult at any point, let alone while we were still dealing with the pandemic. The council will therefore be recommended to borrow, and I use that in inverted commas, £13 million from our reserve to be repaid by 2025 as a means of smoothing our cash flow. This is an exceptional action for exceptional times, but it is necessary to avoid damaging those vital services our residents need and expect. Because I expect 2021-22 to be a turbulent year, I am making one-off provision of £5 million into a special COVID contingency reserve. I hope, of course, that we will not need to draw down any of this reserve, and if that turns out to be the case, it will be returned to our main reserves when it is prudent to do so. I now want to turn to the main thrust of this budget. It would have been tempting for some to say, these are tough times, abandon your ideas for saving the planet and its ecology, stop your transport plans, forget building affordable housing for the moment. Well, the Cabinet considered this for no longer than it takes me to do up my shoelaces. We are clear that the existential threat that climate change poses must be tackled. This includes continuing to bear down on carbon emissions from vehicles and taking other carbon reduction measures. Our budget also contains a range of measures to help our local economy recover, with emphasis on our high streets, enterprise parks, and of course the continuing work on Bath Quays. Our own commercial estate will spearhead this renewal work, together with valued partners such as our two outstanding universities. We will continue to collaborate and secure funding from the West of England Combined Authority, focusing particularly on transport improvements, investment funding for local acquisition, and support for our economic recovery plans. In addition to these initiatives, I have made clear that it is essential to do as much as possible to cushion any financial impacts on our services for children and vulnerable adults. Nevertheless, our budget sets out £8.5 million of savings that it is necessary to undertake to balance the books. Wherever possible, I have tried to ensure that these have the least possible impact on our frontline services. We aim to minimise redundancies, and there are no imposed cuts, but there are changes which we are funding that will improve our working environment for staff, reflecting the dramatic shift to home working, as you've just heard. Our budget also makes provision for a modest pay increase that is favourable, particularly to lower paid employees. During the pandemic and in the future, over the next year, the Council has run the Wellbeing Hub, provided free school meals, distributed millions of pounds of business grants, kept the refuse and recycling service literally on the road, as well as the whole range of services to the neediest residents. Our pandemic planning with the NHS at a local level has been top rate, and the communication of messages on the progress of the pandemic has been faultless in my view. Our administration wants this to continue as long as it is needed. I want to end by setting out our plans for council tax levels next year and how we intend to cushion the impact for lower income households. Nobody wants to pay more tax, but at the same time, most residents value the services they receive from the council. I believe that given the choice, most residents would support a modest increase in their council tax. And that is why I'm proposing a 1.99% increase in council tax in 21-22. This increase is necessary to bridge the financial gap left by the income reductions I previously described and to avoid further damaging cuts. It also enables the continuing delivery of the programme we were elected to implement. In addition to the basic council tax rise I've described, I'm also proposing a 3% increase in the social care precept. This will be used to fund improvements in our adult social care services that have been under such severe pressure during the last year. The total council tax and social care precept increases amount to £1.40 a week at Band D, of which the council tax element is 56 pence a week. Now, I realise that even this amount of increase will be a struggle for some people. That is why I've increased the funds available for council tax support and also funds for welfare support by with a £400,000 a year increase. The latter is a fund aimed at the very poorest who are struggling with everyday bills. Now, Chair, this is a robust budget for very challenging times. It seeks to restore stability in the Council's finances after a truly dreadful year. And I cannot finish without paying tribute to Andy Rothery and his excellent finance team, as well as other directors and officers who have supported our work to bring this budget forward. They have worked tirelessly to bring these proposals before us today and help us rebuild our financial strength. So I commend this budget to the Cabinet and I move the recommendations set out in the report under paragraph 2 right through to paragraph 2.4.
Thank you very much, Councillor Samuel. I also would like to echo your thanks to officers, but I'd also like to extend that to Cabinet as well for the work that they have done as well on this budget. So thank you, Richard, for outlining the budget and the very particular circumstances that this budget is being set. To recap, we have had a very challenging past year with huge losses in our revenue from heritage services, commercial rents and parking income. The government has compensated us for some of this lost income, but as you said, not entirely. We made a mid-year financial recovery plan, which helped reset our finances, but we still are in very incredibly difficult times. The pressures on all our council services, especially adult and children, remain high, and our revenue sources remain precarious. With the prudent action recommended and the increase in council tax, we will still be able to ensure that key priorities for this administration are being delivered, whether that's tackling the climate and ecological emergency, giving people a bigger say, or investing more so that we can have a better environment for everyone with the creation of, for example, low traffic neighbourhoods. We will continue to invest in support for our most vulnerable whilst working with our partners to ensure that the local economy is supported across all of Bath and North East Somerset so that we can recover from the impact of the pandemic, rebalance the economy and reduce the reliance we have had on retail, hospitality and tourism. So I'm very happy to second the motion before us. And I'll turn to Cabinet to ask if anybody wishes to speak. So I've got possibly Councillor Dave Wood to start and then Councillor Guy.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Well, what can I say on this one? Other than Councillor Samuel, we have pulled a blinder with this. It's hard to express from the outside what a tough year this has been for the council on a financial basis. The massive black hole that's been left by COVID, government breaking its promises to Bath and North East Somerset to cover these losses. Things were looking grim, but what you've managed to do is achieve a balanced budget, but also crucially protect frontline services and manage to plan for the impact of COVID going into the next financial year as well, whilst also investing in our priorities too, like transport, the climate emergency and housing. And from my point of view, particularly enhancing street cleaning and tree planting, which are issues very close to my heart. So thank you very much, and I will enthusiastically vote for this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. I'd now like to ask Councillor Warren for her contribution, please.
Councillor Samuel and colleagues, the seriousness and urgency of the environmental crisis cannot be underestimated and must not be forgotten, despite the impact of COVID on both society and council budgets over the last 12 months. The UK Climate Assembly, a group of 108 members of the public chosen to be representative of the UK population, was trained in climate science and the available remedies to the crisis over several weekends last spring. At the end of that process, they voted by 4-1 that the economic recovery from COVID should be targeted towards net zero, with 93% saying that government should encourage lifestyle changes to support this outcome. Many Assembly members clearly favoured an economy that prioritises sustainability over short-term benefit at the expense of the planet. They recognise that action for the environment cannot be put on the back burner whilst we deal with the pandemic. It is too urgent for that. Tonight's budget demonstrates this council's commitment to action to counter the climate and ecological emergencies by embedding solutions into council day-to-day business. Amongst other developments, I'd like to emphasise funds allocated to support work towards several renewable energy schemes, including energy capture at the Roman Baths, along with retrofit of the council's own plant and equipment. We're funding the highest standards of energy efficiency at the new Two Rivers primary school development, and we're addressing transport emissions as well as public health by funding livable neighbourhoods and improved facilities for cycling and walking. We're also providing for a residents' parking permit scheme based on vehicle emissions to encourage those who live in the city to use less polluting vehicles. And both the Summer Valley Investment Plan, providing local jobs, and the Twerton Regeneration Plan, which brings the high street, employment and housing into the same locality, will have the effect of reducing the need for car ownership and commuting. In summary, despite incredibly difficult financial times, with this budget, Councillor Samuel has once again put his money where his mouth is. We're showing we mean business by mainstreaming action on the environment into business as usual. Whilst, like everyone else here tonight, I regret the need to raise council tax, I fully support Councillor Samuel's recommendation to approve this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Warren. Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to reiterate what has been said. I have a long speech planned about how we're spending lots of money on different services to protect children, and particularly around preventative services, around mental health, childcare and early years. But I'll save that detail for full council. I'd just like to reiterate, Richard Samuels has done an amazing job here, putting together an excellent balanced budget in a ridiculously difficult time. His team have worked exceptionally hard. The Cabinet have worked hard with all the officers across the council, and they all need all the praise we can give them. I think it's very important the Cabinet as well thank the teachers and the school staff in these very difficult times. They've been working exceptionally hard without a break over most of the holidays. People think that schools have been closed in the recent times. They haven't been. They've been looking after key worker staff. So I'd just like to reiterate the massive thank you from the whole council to all of our teachers and school staff. Thank you, dear.
Thank you, Councillor Guy, and I think we would all support the words that you've just said. Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Leader. In what's been a very difficult year, the council officer worked very hard to allow us to put forward a forward-looking budget, even in these difficult times. I'd like to praise members of staff who enable us to put this forward. In the housing, planning and economic development portfolio, we have brought forward some savings that allowed us to put forward a better service by mini restructuring the planning department and housing area. We have brought back services back into house to give clear advice on energy to householders. Whilst budgets have been tight in housing, we're very proactive in sourcing funding for a range of government funding opportunities. Indeed, over the last year, we secured around £3.5 million of funding, covering £1 million of funding support our affordable warmth grants, target those residents on low incomes. £2 million provide accommodation and enhanced support for rough sleepers and former rough sleepers. Additional funding to enhance our domestic abuse provision. That's in line with knowing budgets are tight. The housing department is going to sort money from elsewhere. In regenerative areas and communities, we have provisional approval for 10-kilometre walking and cycling next between Newbridge and Bath Easton, with improvements to the radio-gated city centre of Bath. That's end of his useful life. The Lovable High Streets programme is open opportunities for regeneration of high streets that include Kingston High Street, Midsummer Norton High Street, and of course parts of Bath City Centre. As Sarah Warren's already mentioned, my own water treatment is also included in this, and a comprehensive regeneration package been put forward, support the 15-minute neighbourhood, and work to address the barriers to improve community and resident chances. To bring together high street employment and housing components within Twerton Ward. Work continues on enterprise zones and forward-looking work at the Somer Valley Enterprise Zone that will help regenerate this area and also bring forward renewable energy generation. Bath Quays South is continuing and will be available for occupation this year, with tenants already in advanced talks. The new bridge on the River Avon, installed late last year, will be open from June this year, giving a link between two parts of the Quays projects, Bath Quays North and South. And let's not, of course, forget the course of the excellent work on the Keynsham Enterprise Zone that continues delivering for residents. The development of the local plan and the work at STS will allow better control of developments and allow further sustainable regeneration of cities and towns. So instead of looking back and wallowing at what might have been, we look forward to the future.
Thank you very much for your comments, Councillor Ball. Councillor Crossley.
Thank you. The community portfolio covers a wide range of services from Roman baths and museums through to licensing and leisure. The pandemic has had a major impact on this service area, and I'd like to start by commending the staff in all areas of my portfolio who have risen to the challenge of the pandemic whilst continuing to provide services and have come up with innovative solutions to the crisis. Just one example is the way the Roman baths developed COVID-secure visiting to this attraction between lockdowns, and we'll be ready to get back to COVID-safe visiting after the pandemic. During the last 2 years, in all areas of the portfolio, staff have been improving efficiency, working across boundaries, and looking for opportunities to develop income opportunities. Just one example of this is the improvements at Haycombe and the way we look after grieving families and recognise that different families wish to remember loved ones in different ways. Our service is at the leading edge in the Southwest of offering a wide range of memorial gifts. Another improvement has been in ensuring that as we refurbish leisure, we ensure that going forward the income potential is achieved, which will mean that the facility is maintained in good condition. One example of that is our tennis offer. We're working with the LTA and other public bodies, parish councils and partners, and by appointing a specialist operator, we have managed to refurbish tennis courts across the area, and by using modern technology, will ensure that the court hire fees are collected and used to maintain them in good condition, so that they no longer need to become a call on the council budget for repeat investment. This method has meant that we have largely avoided any controversy, whilst at the same time improving our offering across a range of services provided. This is not always easy, as our 2 earlier debates have shown. We've also had to respond to external changes imposed upon us and also to subsidise certain offers when needed. Examples of this have been goal control, in which the Natural England ruling on nests would have been very damaging impact on the city centre of Bath. However, with the evidence accumulated over the years, our pest control team have convinced Natural England to pilot a new approach in the city with something called an organisational licence. Across the country, this year, all urban goal populations will dramatically increase, except in Bath and Worcester, the 2 pilot schemes. So I'm delighted we've kept money in the budget for goals. Where charges are being raised, such as in rat control, We consider that our charges are still compatible and in many cases cheaper than the services from the private sector. Therefore, in this budget, I'm proposing saving totals of 258k across the portfolio, achieved by restructuring, some fee increases, and improving the way we deliver facilities by using a wider range of partnerships. This figure, of course, will need to be adjusted slightly to take in the decision earlier this evening not to proceed with the tender bid approach and to revert to a parkland approach for High Common. But with that small amendment, which I think our financial team would not deem as significant in a budget of this size, I am happy with the budget in my portfolio.
Thank you very much, Councillor Crossley, and I'm sure Councillor Samuel will address the point that you've just made. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Councillor Romero. Good evening, everyone. This Liberal Democrat administration has one overriding purpose: to improve people's lives. How we improve people's lives requires that we deliver financially with well-managed portfolios so that our residents can know that the streets are clean, the potholes in the roads are fixed, and that vital services in children and adult care are well delivered. The previous year for everyone has been a challenge. Every officer across this administration has weathered new working conditions and withstood changes to personal lives. Yet throughout, they have ensured that vital services have been in place and that the spend in every department is in order. This hard-working team are continuing to put in place the necessary investment with a clear set of deliverable objectives in the coming year, with a budget that will continue to improve people's lives. Without a doubt, the budgets in the last year are not always where we had imagined they would be. The transport portfolio has key income generators, for example, parking, that have been seriously impacted by lockdown and social distancing measures, as can be seen in the budget reports. Officers have worked diligently to mitigate these losses and to ensure that all the vital services across the transport portfolio continue to deliver for residents. The transport team have looked to make in-year savings for 21-22 and have found £447,000 of savings across the portfolio. Our core policies are to tackle the climate and ecological emergency and give people a bigger say. These policies are the bedrock of all our budget decisions in the transport brief for the coming year. Delivering this budget will put in place important and necessary infrastructure across Bath and North and Somerset that shows that we are committed to preparing for a resilient future that does deliver for local residents and shows we are focused on improving people's lives, which is our purpose. This budget, as put together by Councillor Richard Samuel, sets out a route to deliver on our continued commitment. I very much support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. I'm going to take Councillor Butters next.
Thank you very much, Chair. They're in the papers, but I would just like to refer to 5 objectives identified in the West of England Joint Local Transport Policy 4. Reducing carbon emissions, mentioned by Richard earlier, supporting economic growth, promoting accessibility, contributing to better safety, security and health, and improving quality of life and a healthy natural environment. We have done and are doing our best to follow these. Thank you very much indeed for the fantastic work that Richard has been doing alongside the officers. I think this is a great budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butters. And now I'd like to invite Councillor Appleyard to speak.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I was reflecting really. Nobody who sat around this table or any of our fellow colleagues as councillors came into this particular line of work with the idea of making cuts and doing that. We want to actually invest and support our residents. But we are where we are, and it's quite right. We actually pay tribute to the work of Andy Rothery and his team, and also the work that Richard's done in steering us through this. And he started this basically almost from day one of the pandemic. he saw the problems that we're actually encountering, but I'd just like to sort of move to more to recognising the work in my particular case with my officers, my director of adult care, who have worked to find the savings that is being required. You know, we play our part in terms of the corporate objective here. But it's not been a case of cutting services from residents. We've looked at innovative ways to actually deliver those services and release some of that resource. I mean, a classic example is our reablement service, where we've invested in that. And by enabling people to be more self-sufficient for actually longer, we've identified less demand on our adult care budget in the future. And it's those type of things. But then again, it's not just our officers within the council, it's also our relationships with people like the CCG, the Clinical Commissioning Group. That's all the doctors, with Virgin Care, who are contracted to deliver 200 of our services, who make such a critical difference to the lives of so many of our residents. They've been very aware of the challenges that the council have, and have readily had conversations with us and worked with us to try and help us achieve the savings that we've had to put actually in place. And then I'd just like to finally sort of just mention our very highly efficient public health team, who have not only guided us through the issues with the pandemic and the vast range of different information that's coming down from government and leading us through there, but they've still managed to do some if you like, the bread and butter work of delivering. We've got a new sexual health contract that's just been placed. We've got a food poverty paper that has been developed, suicide prevention work that's going on. So all this work is still going on, which looks at the longer term health of our residents. And all this happening while we're playing our part of delivering savings into the corporate pot. But what I will say, there is a health warning on here. It does get to a point where we can't maintain or can't continually keep delivering up those sort of savings, everything like this. And there's got to become a time where this government certainly changes the way it actually looks at funding care. It funds health almost at a drop of a hat, and quite rightly so. I mean, our health service is absolutely brilliant, but the care is the other side. It's like a dumbbell approach. You've got health on one side, you've got care on the other side, and they are very much intertwined in the middle. And we need the government to start recognising that those care elements have to be equally recognised within any funding. Thank you very much.
No, a very well made point there, Councillor Appleyard. I'm not seeing anybody else who wants to speak. I'm just double checking that. So I'm going to ask Councillor Samuel if you'd like to sum up, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to the Cabinet for your comments on the budget. I also should have, it was an omission, I should have thanked Councillor Myers actually for his PDS summary earlier in the meeting. And I can give a commitment that now we have heard the comments from the 3 PDS panels, we will include responses to those in the budget report when this goes to council. So there's a bit of work for us to do on that. I don't think I'll say any more other than to thank somebody who hasn't had any thanks this evening for his guidance, and that's Chief Executive. His guidance and advice at an early stage and the discussions we had definitely helpful to this process. So thank you, Will, for your contribution in that. So it just leaves to me to move the recommendations, and for clarity, they are in paragraph 2.1 of the report, A to O, and 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel. And I will now take the vote, and I will do this again in alphabetical order. So firstly, could you indicate if you are for or against this motion? Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Ball.
For.
Councillor Butters.
For.
Councillor Crossley.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Guy.
For.
Councillor Samuel.
4.
Councillor Warren,
4.
Councillor Wood,
4.
Councillor Wright,
4.
and Councillor Romero, myself, I am also 4. So I believe that is another unanimous vote, Jack.
That is correct, Madam Chairman. Unanimous 4.
Thank you. So the next item on our agenda is item 15, and this is the revenue and capital budget monitoring, cash limits and environments from April 2020 to December 2020. And I would like to invite Councillor Samuel to introduce this report and to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Well, this is the regular quarterly report. It covers Q3. The big headline in the report is that we are on course to end the year in a balanced budget position. Now, that is an outstanding achievement when you consider that at one point it looked like we were going to be heading for financial meltdown this year. However, tough and swift action by the Cabinet, working with the senior management team, has meant that there's been a dramatic turnaround. Now, you can contrast this with the announcement only yesterday that 4 councils are to receive emergency funding from the government to prevent them going under: Peterborough, Eastbourne, Bexley and Luton. And it was interesting, that's interesting because Luton was one of the comparator authorities that we were measuring our own fall in income against early on in the pandemic, because they get a lot of income from the airport at Luton. The consequence of balancing is, as I said before, is we do not anticipate now having to withdraw from reserves. And this is so important because it gives the flexibility we need to smooth our finances over the next 2 years. The capital budget has been impacted by the pandemic and necessary rephasing due to construction industry turbulence and our own need to defer schemes to reduce borrowing costs. The changes are set out in the report. I do need to draw the Cabinet's attention to the deficits on the collection funds for both council tax and business rates. Both of these are of concern if they continue into future years. Of course, the course of the pandemic and the effectiveness of control measures will ultimately determine the ability of households and businesses to pay. So with that, I move recommendations 2.1 to 2.4 in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel. And I would also like to say thank you to yourself and also to Cabinet members and indeed to all the officers that have ensured that we are in the position that we are in and not in the unfortunate position of those other councils that you mentioned. I'm very happy to support and second this motion and I won't be saying anything else on this item. Do I have any other speakers? No, I think you can safely move straight on and sum up if there's anything else you want to add, Councillor Samuel.
Nothing to add, Chairman. Chair.
Lovely. Okay, so we move to the vote. And again, in alphabetical order, please indicate if you are for or against the motion. So, Councillor Appleyard. Thank you. Councillor Ball.
4.
Councillor Butters.
4.
Councillor Crossley.
4.
Councillor Guy.
4.
Councillor Samuel.
4.
Councillor Wood.
4.
Councillor Wright.
4.
And I am also in favour of this motion.
Can I say I am too?
I am so sorry. And Councillor Warren.
4.
Thank you. So with that almost admission, I believe that this is actually a unanimous vote. And I'll just ask Jack if you could confirm that to be the case.
That is correct, Madam Chairman. It's a unanimous vote 4.
Thank you. So the next item, I've only got 2 more items to go, is item 16, and this is the Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy. And I would like to invite Councillor Samuel to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. We're nearly there. The strategy statement is the policy that guides the Council's use of its Treasury funds. It's annually reviewed and updated to reflect wider changes in guidance or market conditions. The report, once endorsed by the Cabinet, has to be approved by full Council. Now, this report describes the broad approach to be taken to investment within SIPFA guidelines. In the strategy itself, I want to specifically highlight the progress being made to move the Council away from investment in funds that support unsustainable environmental activities. The detail of a proposed environmental, social and governance ESG investment is set out in para 3.8 in Appendix 1. And I draw the Cabinet's particular attention to it because it begins to map out a pathway to the Council only supporting investment that meets high standards of ethical investment in relation to climate change and treasury management. And this is an emerging area in fund investment, so it's an important step forward. My colleague, Councillor Warren, may wish to comment, as it is she who has been active in pressing the case to advance this policy, and I thank her for that. I want to draw attention to the recommendations in para 2.2 concerning indicators and the delegations that flow from that. I move the recommendations in the report set out at 2.1 to 2.3. Sorry about the music.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel. And I'm going to invite Councillor Warren to do more than just merely make the comment that Councillor Samuel referred to, but perhaps to second this particular paper.
Yep, I'm very delighted to second the proposal to adopt this new Treasury Management Strategy Statement. For the reasons that Councillor Samuel outlined, it brings strategy in this area into line with our climate and ecological emergency declarations.
Thank you very much, Councillor Warren. So I'm just going to quickly check if there's any speakers who wish to speak on this item, and I'm not seeing any. So Councillor Samuel, assuming your music is finished, would you like to sum up?
Yeah, I do dancing as well, but that's not for Zoom. No, I'm not going to add anything to the comments, Chair.
Thank you. In that case, then we will move to the vote. So, Councillor Appleyard, would you like to be for or against this motion?
Answer as well. For.
Thank you. Councillor Ball.
For.
Councillor Butters.
For.
Councillor Crossley.
For.
Councillor Guy.
Purely because of the lovely music. For.
Councillor Samuel.
For, and you've got to wonder who's ringing me at this time.
Well, it's not me. Councillor Wood.
For.
Councillor Wright.
Or don't forget Councillor Warren.
And I haven't forgotten Councillor Warren. I've just forgotten my alphabet. Councillor Warren. For. And myself, I am also for. So I believe, Jack, I've included everybody in that vote, and everybody voted for.
That is correct, Madam Chairman. Unanimous for.
Thank you. And now I feel we ought to almost have a drum roll. We're on the last item of this agenda, and it is the Treasury Management Monitoring Report to the 31st of December 2020. And I would like to invite Councillor Samuel to introduce this report, please.
I'm going to go for the record with the shortest introduction possible. This report is the usual regular report, and for noting, I therefore move the recommendations at 2.1 and 2.2.
Thank you. And do I have an equally short seconding? Sorry, that was a slightly odd way of putting that.
I will second it in an equally short way.
Thank you very much, Councillor Guy. Okay, does anybody wish to make any comment at all on this paper? Councillor Samuel, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think I'd probably be very unpopular if there was. No, nothing to add, Chair.
Thank you very much. In that case, we move straight to the vote. And Councillor Appleyard.
For.
Councillor Ball.
For.
Councillor Butters.
For.
Councillor Crossley.
For.
Councillor Guy.
For.
Councillor Samuel.
For.
Councillor Warren.
For.
Councillor Wood.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
And Councillor Romero, myself, I am for. Jack, is this another unanimous vote?
That is correct, Madam Chairman. Unanimous 4.
Thank you very much. Well, if you've managed to stay with us, I'm sure you will be pleased to note that we are now absolutely at the end of the meeting. So I'd like to thank everyone who stayed with us, everyone who watched the meeting on YouTube, and everyone who participated in the meeting. So the next meeting of Cabinet will be held on the 18th of March 2021. And with that, I would like to end this meeting. Thank you, everybody, and good night.